Okay, so this public hearing is now called to order at 6 PM here on Wednesday, March 29 of 2023. This meeting is being held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, an act relative to the protection of the wetlands is most recently amended. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was posted in the town clerk's office. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order. So we will start with meeting minutes for approval from February 8. I know I had one small change suggested to Joanne. She's made that change. So with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That's unanimous. If it's okay with the members of the commission, I want to skip over meeting mail to allow Bill Madden to both participate in our meeting and then hightail it over to Carver, correct? Okay. Okay, so item number 2 on here, Navison LLC, 550 Main Street, peer review update and request to resume construction, review of matters presented, votes may be taken. So if you'd like to begin.
Okay, I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering, and the Conservation Commission engaged me to do a review of the interim stormwater management plan that was submitted by Weston and Sampson for the Madison project at 550 Main Street. So project's kind of evolved a little bit from when we first started. When we first started reviewing the documents that were provided in that interim plan, like the day after, immediately following, we had a pretty significant rainfall event on the 14th of March. At that time, I was asked to go to the site to examine what was going on out there, just to, based on the past history and a release that occurred on the site. They wanted to, well, Pat wanted me to go out there and check it out and make sure things were in order, so to speak. So that's what I did. I went out there on the 13th, the day of the rainstorm event. I met with Joe Scott from Navison. He and I went through all the drainage basins, sediment basins rather, that were constructed, and we walked through the off-site areas. We walked through the neighborhood also at Scott Way. And then what I did is I went back on the following day, on the 14th. There were a couple things that I wanted to see as how they related to stormwater on the site, and how things were, and basically look to ensure that things were under control the day after the storm, which they were. So that was what I did as far as inspections, and I'll get on with that in a moment. But the first thing that we did is we reviewed that interim stormwater management plan, and we came up with a list of a half a dozen comments with some suggested changes to the plans, which were not to the plans, but more or less to the calculations. Some to do with the curve numbers, pump discharges associated with the dewatering methodology with the sediment basins, some comments on some drainage elevations on the plants. We also commented on the mounding calculations that were done, which were all right. And then we also noted that if there were to be any subsequent or any changes that resulted in a plan change, that we would review them. But after a couple of discussions with Weston and Sampson, they provided me with the backup information that I was looking for, particularly with respect to the runoff curve numbers. We wanted to ensure that the volume of water that was being deposited in the sediment basins was based on the right cover conditions of the soil, the slope of the land, and the soil conditions itself. We suggested that they modify some of the curve numbers. I think that there was some reliance placed on some past drainage calculations, but when those woods were removed, it really changed the entire character of the land, and we needed to reflect that in the latest set of calculations, which they provided to me, and I was able to review those, and those were in order with respect to the runoff. and what have you. The thing that we were most concerned with ensuring that the minimum volume, at least the minimum volume for the each sediment basin was there. And that's based on like the stormwater pollution prevention plan of 3,600 cubic feet per acre draining to one of those basins. So we went through those calculations. They gave us the water volumes, and then we were interested in ensuring that the drainage basins had the capacity to hold those volumes. If the water's running off, we need to make sure that it's in there. And due to that previous water that left the site, I wasn't certain exactly how it occurred. After going out there, doing a couple inspections, seeing what went on, it was pretty clear what took place. And I think the discharge from, there's 3 pipes that go into sediment basin 1 that were discharged through the berm and onto an off-site location, ultimately to an off-site location. And those things were properly sealed, plugged up. That's what I evaluated on both the 13th and the 14th. So there was no water leaving the site from the basins on the 13th. And on the 14th, the water had receded to below those pipe elevations. Even though they were sealed, I wasn't able to visualize what was occurring inside the basin. And upon that review, I saw that those were wrapped with plastic in addition to the outlets being sandbagged. So there was no water leaving the site, and there was no potential for it to leave the site unless it overtopped or rose to the level of the spillway and then discharged over the spillway. So when I went out there and looked at it, I felt that everything appeared to be in pretty good condition with respect to what was built. And then I was provided with the backup design information which supported essentially what was there. There's a couple little things that we're talking about just in the form of format for providing me with some information, but they Weston and Sampson did provide me with the size of those basins as of late this afternoon. It was kind of a tricky thing to look at, but one of the first things we looked at is the water elevation in the sediment basins, where it existed today. And since we couldn't get to the bottom, I thought that maybe we'll look at the surface water elevation and the elevation of our discharge spillway. Then calculate that volume there. Since no water was in it, we could calculate it. Those volumes exceeded the minimum required volumes from 1.5% to 400%. Drainage basin number 1 is literally 4.5 times the size that it would need to be for the water that was discharging to it. The other 2 basins were 1.7 and 1.4 times that volume, not considering the volume that was under the water. So they're significantly larger than what they need to be based on that straight up volume. So I was content with that. I think that what we are trying to do is just put it into a final format that is easily read and understood, particularly for the benefit of the commission, and just summarize it in a table that would be suitable for the administrative record that you're keeping on the project. So that's what I saw when I went out there. I think that the straw barrier that's on the disturbed surface fairly significant. I mean, that's the first guard against any sediment coming into that basin. I mean, that's the first thing you want to do. The canals are small drainage ditches, and the straw wattles that they put to designate certain drainage areas, they were all in place. It all looked pretty good. The berms were properly stabilized. They had a good erosion control blanket on it. And when we walked off-site, we did, Joe Scott and I did look at some of the down gradient areas immediately adjacent to that sediment basin 1. And I don't know the number of the home, but looked like a little bit of a drainage way that went through the woods. And then there was a small culvert underneath the driveway that went to one of the ponds down in there. There was water flowing to that basin. It was was clear because none of the water was leaving the basin. So that was working out the way it was. No problem with that. I think that, it is a rather large area. There are some sources of runoff running down, graded from other places to the north, a little bit to the east and what have you. But all in all, I think that the site did seem to be well stabilized. They were pumping water into so that there was no discharge allowed from the site, so they were pumping water into the frac tanks that were stockpiled on site. And when I was there, JP Noonan was hauling some of that material to the off-site disposal location. So all that looked to be in reasonable order at that time. So right now, I think that, I went out there one more time just on a Saturday afternoon, and everything looked reasonable to me and fairly well stabilized, and no real sources of erosion or off-site impact on that. So that's where I was with the inspection and the review of the interim stormwater report.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So Bill and I talked today about a recommendation, and we spoke to Navison about a recommendation. But there are some residents here that would like to be heard, and I think that maybe you want to hear them before we make any recommendations.
Okay. Does anybody want to ask questions of Mr. Madden or of Navison? If so, please approach the microphone and tell us your name and ask your question.
Yes, I live at 36 Perry Hill. My name is Donald DuPont.
Okay.
When you look at the project, my house is, you can see the project right in front of mine. Did you ever walk that field?
Which field?
Right in the hay field that's there?
The neighboring field on
Yes.
the offsite property?
Yes.
No.
It's like a marsh now. All the water from your project is going in there and going in my cellar. 2 weeks in February, I've had water down there for 2 straight weeks. 60 gallons a day I was taking out of there. This month, March, the ash door on the clean out, I got it coming out the door. That's 13 inches off my floor. I got the water coming out of the ash clean out door. That's how much water coming out of there. I got water coming on all 4 sides of my house, the front, the back, and the 2 sides. And I just pulled out 10 gallons today for 2 weeks in March and 2 weeks in February. Never had that before. 30 years I've been there. That the water's coming in the field and making it a marsh and coming in across.
Okay.
It ain't holding the water. It's going in the field. Did you check the field? No.
He can't go on somebody else's private property.
Well,
He's
that's
here
where it
for us.
is.
He doesn't, he's not.
Saturday I went out there, there's an
Hold on
inch
a
of
second.
water
Hold on a
on the
second.
ground. It ain't
Hold on
absorbing
one
the
second.
water.
I want to explain to you that
I know
he
he
is not
can't go
from
on there. I
Navison.
didn't
No,
know.
but I want you to know, he works for us.
Yes.
He's not covering for Navison.
Did
He
anybody
works
go
for
look
us.
at it?
So, as I told you outside, I've spoken to Navison and I've spoken with Bill, and if there are any residents that are having flooding problems, Navison is willing to pay for the town's peer review engineer, Navison's engineer, and myself to come out and look at the problem.
During rain, that's.
Yeah, but we need permission to come on your property,
Yeah,
and we need to
you do.
coordinate that. But they're willing
It's
to
a
do
mess. I
that.
got 2 weeks, I'm still taking water out of my basement.
Yeah.
And the field's a marsh now. What was that like that?
So we have your contact information,
Yes.
and if there's anybody else here tonight that is having flooding in their basement, they feel that it's from 550 Main Street, please speak up, and the town's engineer, peer review engineer will come to your house and look at it and give a report to the commission. And
Yeah,
if it's a
because the
problem-
only change that has been there for 30 years is this project.
I understand, but we're getting.
30 years, that's the only thing that's changed.
But the reason I've asked for this is, you deserve an answer from the town, but we're also receiving a lot of complaints from other parts of town of the same situations where there aren't solar fields being put in. I want you to have an answer, and I want you to have it from an independent party. Go ahead, Steve.
Mr. Campbell?
Mr. Chairman and members here, 100%. I believe you did call us. I believe one of our, Mark Anderson, our construction guy, tried to call you back. We have reached out to people, anybody that Pat sends to us who has raised complaints. We've looked at this, and we are in favor of talking with a third party. Right? There's some of these that it's unfortunate that it's happened There was a lot of rain in January, February, we've all talked about that. Independent third party who could look at this and give a reasonable assessment. Because us saying it's not us is not what I want. We're willing to pay for that, go out, and if we're causing something, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We've given our word to this
Right.
board and to the Board of Selectmen that we're willing to take ownership for stuff that we've done. And if we need to push back, we're going to push back and say it's not us. But clearly
Yeah.
we will do that.
And for the record, just tell us who you are.
Steve Campbell, Nelson.
Okay, so Mr. Dupont, that's a yes from you.
That's me?
So that's a yes from you for them to go to your property, okay?
Mr. Chairman, real quick, and when it rains, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
When it rains and then the subsequent, day after, so we can all,
Perfect.
we're fine.
Did you have another comment?
I'm good.
Pat?
I just want everybody to know that Navison has done everything 100% that the commission's asked them to do, that the selectmen have asked them to do, that the planning board's asked them to do.
Right.
They're very willing to get this done and get their project going. So I have confidence that Navison's going to do what they say.
Any other residents related to this project, like their comment, question, learn more information? Okay.
Okay. So,
And I should ask commission members if they have
Yes.
questions for Mr. Madden or anybody from Navison or President Sampson?
No, it's pretty thorough.
No, that's thorough, yeah.
so what we talked about today, between myself and Bill Madden and Mark Anderson, was the fact that Navison has been asking for a couple of weeks for permission to stage panels and racking and other things on the job. They need to take delivery, it's got to come in. And I asked Bill if he thought it would be in the way of the stormwater review, and it wasn't. But now, Bill's much further along in the review, feels that the site's been stabilized. So we asked Navison to give us a schedule of what they wanted to do on top of mobilizing, and I gave all the commissioners a copy of that. And basically it involves, putting in the ground screws. I'm not a solar guy, so why don't you explain your equipment?
Yeah, no. I think we've shown since that last event and when we went to the Board of Selectmen, we've been trying to do this. What we're asking for is, because there are a couple of little things left over. Do you want this? No, I got it. There's a couple of little things left over with Mr. Madden, so we're not asking for discharge yet. What we're asking for is to go out there, starting on Monday, put ground screws in the ground and put posts up. We're not adding any impervious. All that is just adding the posts. That's the first step. Immediately upon that, we would then hydroseed the entire site and start to try to get the grass growing. And we will do that, and I'm saying here, we will do that by April 15th. And then we would not move to subsequent construction until Mr. Madden is done. We would not start putting up glass. We would not start anything else until that time. And we will work with Weston and Sampson and our guys to make sure that Bill is satisfied in the next couple of days to get that done. And that's what we're doing. And then we will leave the non-discharge off-site in place until Bill and the town is ready for us to do that. So all we're asking for is to actually start doing some work that we can do. We're going to keep the water all on site, and that's what we're asking for.
And we are working towards having Bill approve their ability to de-water so they can get the frac tanks off the job and stop doing all of that.
But those will stay. Those will stay until someone signs off. And no water will leave until we get that.
And I was going to ask, so you still have, was it 8 frac tanks there? 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you using to install the helicals?
So Mark Anderson, my construction, unfortunately, has just had surgery, so I don't want to have him waddle over here.
It would,
Two pieces of equipment. We'll have 2 crews going.
2 rock drills and 2 TSM machines, which essentially would drive the helical pile into the pre-drilled hole.
And 8 guys.
All right. Stabilization if you know rain's coming. Because, I mean, is it track machine?
It's a track machine.
Yeah.
And we could work on, Mark and I were talking about this before, at the end of every day, we can respray with straw until we get the grass down.
Sounds good.
So,
And Bill's willing to make spot inspections, and they're willing to
and
tolerate
we'll pay for
that.
it. Yep. We'll replenish the town's funds just to make sure. And then I also wanted to remind this board that the town does have about $90,000 of our money in escrow for this account. So if the screws go in the ground and the posts come up and something happens, that can all be taken out and replaced. So there's protection there.
Good to know.
And I think we're trying to do this as a sign of good faith, to show you that we're going to
Yeah.
do exactly what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks and get it, and not screw it up again.
And part of the emergency here, Bob, and it benefits the town as much as it benefits Navison, is that one of our last meetings, they told us they had a date certain that they needed to make their connection, or they were gonna lose their connection. And this thing could go belly up if we delay it unreasonably for, any amount of time beyond the next few days. We're at a very critical stage that they need to get this stuff in the ground. So-
I think what we're asking for is very minimal intrusion. Right, a couple of track vehicles, we'll make sure it's cleaned up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We'll watch it.
Yeah.
We're not going back full board yet until Bill signs off on it.
Yeah.
And Bill's taking responsibility, as the peer review guy saying, I think it's okay to do it.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, well,
I didn't mind putting that on you, so.
no, that's fine. But I just think, from the commission's point of view, I think that the sooner things can get stabilized, the better off life will be for all. And I think that even with respect to discharge from those sediment basins off-site, there's a couple of little tweaks that can be made to the existing basins that they have there. There will be a time lapse between the time they do spray it and put the hydro seed down and get it seeded before that'll fully germinate and grow and be of some effectiveness with respect to mitigating any erosion. So I think that the sooner we get it going, I think the better off we all will be long-term. But don't lose sight of the opportunity to at least think about allowing them to discharge some of that water from those sediment basins off-site. Right now, they're sized to basically hold more than one 3.5-inch rainfall event, which is good. And as long as we have 72 hours thereabouts of detention time within those basins, we can virtually guarantee that we'll get the maximum amount of sediment released to the bottom of the basin that we can. But just keep in mind that the total TSS, total suspended solids, or the sediment that's in the water in a material such as this, the best we're going to be able to see is really somewhere between 85 and 90%. So the water still will have some color to it, but it will be free from all real coarse sediment and things that would cause a downstream impact. The light colloidal matter and the light silt matter that's in that water, not so problematic unless it was like pumped out of, discharged from the bottom of the basin, where you might get a slug of, let's call it mud, because that's what it would really be, discharged onto the ground, and that could potentially lead to a couple of problems. But all in all, I think that the program that's been described thus far is good. It's a good first step, and I think providing that straw after they do some of their installation, hit it at its source and deal with it then, and helps prevent sediment from discharging into those basins.
Right. Mr. Campbell.
Just, Mr. Chairman, real quick. Thank you, Bill. But I just want to be clear. We're not asking to discharge off-site until he's ready, until the town's ready.
Right.
We'll keep everything on site. We'll keep the 16 frac tanks. We'll keep the trucks rolling until we're ready. So that's what we're at. We're willing to work here, but
Right.
we do want to get back and start throwing screws and posts in the ground.
Gotcha.
So, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. So, there's no motion to make, or is there?
I think you should make a motion to allow them to do what's in this
Okay.
proposal. Get it on the record.
All right.
And make the
Yeah.
letter part of the record. If you want to read the letter, I don't know, so the public hears what it says.
I have a copy of it in front of me, Ryan, unless it's tucked in here.
There you go, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. So, read this for the record, and this is dated when,
Today?
Today.
it is today, okay. So Pat, as discussed and per your request, we are looking to begin construction immediately, starting with civil operations. The first task to complete would be to prep the area underneath the array, so we are able to begin installation of screw foundations April 3rd, 2023, that being next Monday. As foundations are going in, a crew would be behind them installing vertical legs, which would help identify where each foundation is located. Once this is complete, we would spray the entirety of the array with hydro seed no later than April 15. This would be monitored and continually resprayed in intervals throughout construction until full vegetative cover is established. In parallel with the screw foundation install, we would begin to work areas outside the array footprint to final design. Once achieved, we would hydroseed these areas beginning the week of April 24 and monitor them throughout construction as well. Please feel free to reach out with any questions of concern, and that's from Mark Anderson over there with the crutch. He's the Vice President of Construction and Operations. So I think based on what we've heard from Mr. Madden, Mr. Campbell, and from Mr. Anderson, and I'm glad you asked the question that you did, Ryan, I'm willing to accept the motion that we allow Navison to proceed with the installation of these screws. Yeah.
The work described in the letter.
Right, yeah, the work described in the letter, yeah.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That's unanimous. Mayor? Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Safe travels. Okay. I'm going to go back up to meeting mail. So the first thing on here is Eversource Energy will be performing work on Joseph Street, Helen Street, and Earl Street. I'll let the crowd clear out here. So, a couple of letters here from Eversource. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I
No,
don't hear very well, and
no, my
just about hear what
no,
you're
my
Usually get
apologies.
amplified.
Yeah,
I can't hear you at all.
You want me to turn the volume up a little bit?
probably not. I can just talk a little more closely.
There you go.
And no one's ever accused me of being afraid of a microphone. So we have on here, meeting mail, Eversource Energy will be performing work on Joseph Street, Helen Street, and Earl Street, which will involve the replacement of an existing natural gas main. And that's what the letter here says. So it's Eversource is submitting this letter to inform the commission that maintenance work will be performed on Joseph Street, Helen Street, and Earl Street, which will involve the replacement of an existing natural gas main under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. This activity is exempt. Eversource is providing this notification to your commission, which consists of a brief narrative about the planned work as well as a plan of the area showing the location of the activity. And they give us contact names of people to call if there's any questions. There is a few pages here, which I will not read to you, unless you all want to sleep here in the Council on Aging building. So it explains it, and if you're curious about where, they do provide a map on the last page, and I can leave that here on the table if you want to have a look at it. But that's a courtesy that we get from Eversource anytime they're going to be doing any work, whether it's anything like that or just general easement or right-of-way clearing. And there's another letter received from our town administrator, James Kelly, regarding right of first refusal. So it's, I'll read the letter here. On January 6, 2023, this office, and this is the town administrator's office, along with your office, received a letter and purchase and sales agreement from Robert and Ellen Hardy of 1443 Main Street in regard to right of first refusal on map 3 lots 14 and 15 as filed in the Bristol County Registry of Deeds and Plan Book 2385, page 312. Please return your recommendation to this office as soon as possible. And there are copies of the letter, and then there's not a map here, but I don't know if you wanted to say anything about this, Pat. So I don't know if this is.
Just a standard form.
But yeah, but so is it coming out of Chapter 61A? Is that what this
Yes.
is?
And there is a question on this by the selectmen that this may be a second or third transfer out of that same parcel. So this actually may be something that the town exercises their rights. It's a large piece of property supposedly being sold for $50,000.
Right.
So it wouldn't,
Yeah, 56,000.
yeah, it wouldn't be a bad deal for the town.
So they're asking us for our recommendation?
Yes. So if you think it's valuable for open space, or you think it has any use for the commission, they'd ask you to express that opinion.
How
If not-
soon do they have to have an answer? Because it's tough to make a decision when we haven't seen it on a map or been at the property.
Yeah, so we actually think this is already late already because it didn't get circulated properly
Okay.
to us.
So it's entirely possible it's been sold off and,
I don't think it's been sold off yet, but I think the selectmen are under the crunch. And historically, the town, since I've been here, has not exercised any of those
Correct.
rights. And this one just happened to pop up, and I think everybody just gave it the, oh, we never do this. And it lingered. So, I mean,
so I haven't seen it and I'm
we have
curious
site
as
visits? Do we have site
to where the
visits?
property is, to where the money would come from.
no?
I don't, Ryan, did you have a question?
I looked at the map and it looks like it's landlocked.
That's what it looked like to me, too.
Okay,
It's landlocked by the reservoir.
Right.
so there's your answer.
So,
And what's the number again? On Main Street?
1443. So we wouldn't, even if we had it, we wouldn't be able to get to it, is what you're saying?
I guess the question is, would the commission want it for open space? Would you think it was valuable to the commission?
I'll leave that decision to the selectmen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can just defer to them?
We'll defer to, yeah, we'll defer to the Board of Selectmen on that one.
What's the deal?
Yep. Okay. And that's it for those pieces of meeting mail?
Can you guys take a quick vote on that?
Sure. Somebody make a motion that we defer this decision to our Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, next we have a motion to reopen public hearing.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, continued public hearing, stormwater amendment to a previously approved stormwater plan for Paul Boucher and Nancy Durfee, 7 Morton Lane, file number is SE001-0566. A request to amend a previously approved stormwater plan was filed by Paul Boucher and Nancy Durfee for property located at 7 Morton Lane, map 14, lots 15H and 17. The applicant requests review of the stormwater management plan calculations submitted by Huro Engineering LLC, and that was a plan sketch submitted on July 22nd of 2022 by Huro Engineering LLC.
We continued this for 1 month.
I thought so.
Yeah.
We did, but I did go by and I did take a picture after the storm last week or whatever it was of the silt fence had, failed to get at the end of the road. And Ms. Durfee came out and she sent a letter to the commission. She was upset that I came by. But I do have a suggestion if you folks want to hear it. So I spoke to Andrew Point today.
Can we just hang on 1 second? I was not upset that you came to our house.
Well, I read the letter you sent. so.
I was upset that you put us on the agenda without notifying us.
We-
You could have taken a vote without us being here, and we'd like to be here to speak on our behalf. That's why I was upset, not because
It was
you
not for
came to our
discussion
house.
as far as I know.
Well, it wasn't because you came to our house. I didn't say anything. I just asked if there's anything I could help you with.
Okay, so here's my proposal, because I'm in disagreement with my commission. And my commission maybe is in agreement with you and maybe isn't. So a gray area, and among other consultants, and Bill Madden weighed in on it with me today. I spoke to someone at DEP today, and our circuit rider. We have a circuit rider that advises the Conservation Commission, comes in, does training, does those things. He's not an enforcement person. He has offered to go up to your property with the commission and yourselves and do a viewing and say, you're either all set or he recommends this. And I recommend that to the commission as a solution to this problem. If you don't want DEP on your property, then I can't help you anymore after that.
We are in the process of having our site contractor come, in fact, tomorrow. He dropped off his equipment today. We're going to finish the road as we had said we would, and that would include any repairs or need for changes to the swale, so that we are not doing any harm to any of the wetlands. As we continue to tell you, that is what we are doing. It's happening.
But the
And
swale-
we also have the engineer reviewing the site. The engineer has been to the site. He's taken readings of the topography, and we will provide you with all of the information that you've asked for, and then some. So
Okay, but you would need to provide that prior to making any changes to what you have built, so that the commission can approve that.
No, I'm sorry.
You have a notice of intent, and it had certain conditions, and you've already said you don't want to go by those conditions, that it was over-designed. Well, let me.
We're exempt.
Well, you're exempt from a permit, but you're not exempt from review. And that's the catch. And that's why it was continued for a month. So my offer tonight is the DEP circuit rider who advises this commission and others is willing to come out and say, you're either exempt and you're allowed to send untreated stormwater out to a wetland, or you're not.
Mr. Rocha, Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
what is your suggestion for us? We have met the requirements of the commission.
Yeah.
We have done what you've asked us to do. We're continuing to do what you ask us to do. And we don't understand what Mr. Hannon is trying to approach us with.
Last meeting, last time we were here,
Right.
you said we were exempt to a single family. You wanted pre and post runoff of the site.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're working on.
Right.
And that was going to be continued till April. Our engineers getting the plan ready, getting whatever it is that you guys require. And that was it. I thought we were done. This is harassment from this gentleman, and we've just about had enough. So it seems like the goalpost changes every time we get a 3-inch rainstorm. 99% of that water is not coming off our site. That water is coming off of Hathaway Road, which comes in off one of the paper streets and circles in the back. And it comes off of the very top of Morton Lane. The town has a water problem from way back when. So what you're trying to have us do is fix the town's water problem, which we're not.
Don't direct that comment to me. I'm not trying to have you do
Well,
that.
all I'm saying is, we're not going to fix the town's water problem because it's been a problem for 100 years. So the last meeting, we agreed what you wanted. Okay, we agreed on it. But it seems like every time there's a rainstorm, this individual is out taking pictures, looking at, the silt fence came down because of the amount of water. So we probably had 2 inches of rain in 6 hours. I don't know what it was, but it was a significant amount of rain over 3 days. A silt fence is not made to hold back water, as you all know.
No, we don't know that, because it is made to hold back water.
Well,
And that's why they make
the
reinforced
silt fence is
silt
back
fence.
up.
Let 'em
It
finish
came
that.
down, it's back up. We're in the process of finishing this project. Now, we're gonna come back end of April, like Brian had said, this was continued, and that's what the plan was. Our engineer, I think he's coming back from vacation shortly. We're trying to do our best. We're gonna finish the site, just get it done, and we're done with it.
We are building the road according to plan as well as the swale and all the check dams. We're probably going to add an additional amount of stone at the very end of the last check dam to make sure that we're doing all that we possibly can to keep that water from, being problematic for us too. We live there, so we want to make sure it's right. We weren't, if we're exempt, we weren't even required to do the swale, but we already built it, so we plan to stick to those and to make it right. And we've told you we were going to make it right, and we're in the process of doing that. I don't know what else we can do.
So Pat, could you clarify why you've talked to Mr. Poyant?
Yes. So earlier today, I got an email from EPA telling me that they had an anonymous third-party complaint for 7 Morton Lane.
That's full.
Oh,
Let him go ahead, Pat.
I don't come to meetings and lie. All right?
Okay.
Continue.
So I called EPA, and I talked to the 404 wetlands person, and I told her that I had talked to the circuit rider after I read that email, and asked the circuit rider what his advice was. And he said, rather than have an enforcement person come out, I'm allowed to come out and advise the Conservation Commission on how to resolve it. but I can't get involved in enforcement. You've released your enforcement orders, so the circuit rider will come out to advise the commission on how to handle this. We don't have the experience and the knowledge of the DEP Stormwater Handbook. Currently, our stormwater bylaw has no actual regulations in it, and lacking those regulations, the Stormwater Handbook is in play. And according to the Stormwater Handbook, because the entire project is in the buffer zone, the stormwater regulations apply. And it's not exempt from being able to discharge uncontrolled stormwater and impacted stormwater into a better bordering vegetated wetland. You can't be exempt from that. You can be exempt from having to get a permit, but you can't be exempt from dumping dirty water and uncontrolled water into the BVW. It's not exempt,
Coming off the site.
period.
Well, we're not,
There's 850 feet of road before they even get to their first swale or their driveway. How can they be in charge of, that was a 2-inch rain event. How, I don't get it, like, they didn't design the swale for the whole road. They designed it for the runoff off of their house.
I'm just making a recommendation that you take the advice of the circuit rider. That's my pain-free resolution to it, rather than an enforcement person going out there.
and what would be the enforcement?
It would.
Because a silt fence came down in a 2-inch rainstorm, and the water that was going over that silt fence, you could almost drink it. It was clean.
I didn't write the Clean Water Act, and I didn't
Well,
write the Wetlands
all I'm
Protection
saying
Act,
is,
and
it seems like we're not being treated fair.
I've offered you a really
Mr. Chairman, I
easy
believe
solution.
that-
And what was an easy solution?
To let the circle
What is
sit.
his easy
No, I don't,
solution?
because it's not, it's between us and the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we have put up extra measures. We went and bought more hay bales. Those things appeared to have worked very well over the amount of water that came in versus the first time it came in at 3.5 inches. Such a small amount of silt fence went down this particular storm. I mean, because of all the measures that we took, there was no erosion in and around any of the swales like we saw the first time this happened. That's why it was a surprise to see it on the agenda. You know, we really were surprised and taken back, and that's the reason why we actually called and went by the town hall to find out, you know, what can we do as residents here, as we have tried.
Right.
What more, I don't know what more we can possibly do, and I'm not going to agree. Do you want to agree to a circuit rider? I'm not going to agree to a circuit rider because we're almost to the end. We've finished. This is
Right. So, I think the commission, I don't think our position has changed in the last 3 weeks regarding you doing the work on the property, the enforcement orders being lifted. I mean, we can't stop DEP, EPA, or any other person from viewing from a public street, certainly. And if you don't want the circuit rider on your property, then don't do it. I'm not going to, I mean, I don't know if it's a reasonable suggestion or not, because I was surprised to hear it. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah, please, Rick. And you might need to use that so people can hear you.
I think the next course of action has been determined. We voted to give them till the end of April for their engineer to come up with the calculations, and that's it. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's anything else between now and then. And the engineer comes back to calculations by the end of April, and we move on to the next step from there.
Anybody else? And maybe, you know, depending on what you hear from Alan, maybe that's the right time for a circuit rider, if that's even needed.
Yeah, I mean, we should have some of this solved in the next day or two with our site contractor working out the rest of the details on the swale. I think, and the way the pitch of the road. It really, if you spend, as much time as we have right now, we watch the water, we're concerned about what's going on, we know what we're up against. We've been here since August, at least once a month for the first few months, and then twice a month thereafter. So we're committed to working with the commission. I think we haven't missed a meeting, and we realize where the water is coming from, and it is not from our site. It is coming from the road. And
We were looking at some pictures before we even started this project, and you could see the water, is quite a bit of water coming right down the road when it was virgin, before we even put a machine on site, before we did anything. So there's a lot of water that was coming down Morton Lane prior to us even doing it. So it's not like we've created more water.
And along half the way, up the hill from us, is where many of the homes have pumps. I'm assuming they have water in their basement as well. Like, there is water everywhere. You're hearing about it from everyone. This is not unique right now. We've had a lot of rain, and it's high water table and poor soils that are causing the difficulties. I think everyone's having them. I don't think we're unique.
I should have asked, is anybody else here to ask questions or speak on this project before we wrap up this topic? Okay. I'm going to request a motion to continue this to its original schedule of keeping it open until, we said, the end of April, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The engineer said he would have all the calculations done at the end of April.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
do we have that motion?
So moved.
So, from Heidi, Ryan, is that a second from you then?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We have a next motion to reopen a continued public hearing.
Oh, so moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have a continued public hearing, Stormwater, José Costello Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lots 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, and 18G. This project now has had an official appeal filed. So now this has been moved to town council's office, and I think that's where it needs to sit at the moment, correct? Mr. Hannon?
So I talked to town council this morning. We're having an internal meeting tomorrow. Council will be zooming in.
I don't know if that'll reach you or not, either that or shout.
And it's just recommended by town council that their council contact him. And then council will advise us. I can't tell you what council said, and
Okay.
can't give all that up.
So it looks like we're gonna have our town council, Mr. Fernandes, would that be with you?
Well, I'd like to be heard on the record.
Please. Yeah.
The answer is...
Approach the microphone and share your name.
But at least I think José Costello and Deep Brook Estates is entitled to...
So, Armand, for the record,
I will.
thanks.
Attorney Armand Fernandes on behalf of the appellant before the Board of Selectmen and on behalf of José Costello before this commission. As I always like to say, and it's, you assume I'm trying to curry some kind of favor, but I have to sit here every day and hear people whose lives and spend $30,000, $40,000 on their home, which is the most important thing they have in their life. You got to feel for them, and I got to feel for you for trying to make the decisions that sometimes have to hurt them or sometimes abuse them. I'm not making any judgment on any of that. It's not my job, and that's not what I'm here. I'm just telling you, you got a tough job. And I was out at this site with a number of you walking in the cold on a Saturday morning when you could have been home with your kids, taking them to their ball games, or watching television and just sleeping late. So thank you for your service. And I mean it. It's not done for any reasons. Now, I did appeal. And what did I appeal? I appealed a cease and desist order that was issued by the agent. It was not action taken by this board, it was by the agent. At that appeal, I said, and I repeat, I believe that the agent thinks he's doing right. I argued that he is exceeding his authority. Now, I read, again, the proposed bylaw that's going to town meeting on stormwater, the Article 9 amendment. It's as if his actions really follow the terms of that bylaw. If you read that bylaw, in my view, because everything is the Conservation Commission, our agent, we don't need you. You don't have to be there. The agent can make all the calls. At this meeting, he's an agent. As by definition, he works for somebody. You make a ruling, you're the boss. You're the master. He's the servant. That's the way I think it's supposed to work. But that's not how I see it work here all the time. Now, again, I'm not suggesting any kind of nefarious, unreasonable wrongdoing. That's not my game. But I am saying, I think, when I say actions are reasonable, I think it's arbitrary and capricious, which is a fancy word for saying changing your mind. Let me give you an example. 2 appeals. One for cease and desist, the next on the 9th. The next day, on the 10th, he sends a letter saying, I want your O&M, your operation and maintenance agreement. I want it by the 17th. What he forgot was on the meeting of 2/22, your meeting, you voted to give them until March 22nd to report it. Now, when you change your mind like that without a reason, what was the reason? It was obvious. He was upset that Joe Costello, who's not here today, but his son is, he couldn't be here. Joe has a religious thing he does every year, and from now until Easter, he's gonna walk 20 miles a day. So God love him, I hope he prays for all of us, and we shouldn't help, you know, the help we can get. But getting back to the issue here. Now, there are other things he said. At that March 8th meeting, look at it. I have no minutes for it, but and you adopted some, and I understand she has a tough job. By the way, 4 hours of upset, and that's why if you read that, you're gonna find, you read the minutes, or maybe not the minutes, but if you look at the video, he tied up my secretary for 4 hours. And she only works part-time 4 hours for this board, and therefore she can do anything else. Well, Mr. Costello was a little upset about that. He said, she's a very nice lady, and she cooperated very nicely. And he says the same about the clerk. He says about 2.5 hours, and I paid $50, which is, I think, what the law requires me to do. And by the way, the law entitles him to get that. He has a right to do that. He doesn't need permission from anybody to do it. The Freedom of Information Act gives him a lot of power, and we are rules of law, right? That's how we function. Now let's getting back to the other issue. And that was said at that meeting. There was a litany of things. EPA has filed violations up there. Well, if he has some inside information, certainly would like to see it. As of 5 o'clock today, I asked Mr. Costello, Joe, did you get any kind of certified mail, telephone call, or anything from EPA? Maybe he knows something. EPA demanded stuff on 2/16. He took them there after he said they were supposed to go to some other place and they didn't even go. And by the way, the place they didn't take him to was, he asked DEP or EPA to come down and look after you voted that there was no violation. So I don't understand how an agent can sort of like be the super appeal and go over your head if that's what happened. Maybe there's something else that happened here. I don't know. But I don't think that's how this organization, this commission, should function. Now, no EPA violations. Oh, he stopped doing his SWPPP inspections because he could do them. He voted, he was a businessman, Joe spends the time. And I don't want to, every time I have a chance to talk about Joe Costello, I do it. 17 years old, he used to cut my grass. I'm going to cut his grass pretty soon. The fact of the matter is, from 17, floor boy in the factory, he ran up and became executive vice president in charge of manufacturing. Not bad for a guy from the Azores. Worked 80 hours a week, 60 hours a week, selling real estate while working in a factory. And then he ends up, he lives in your town, drinks your water. His children live here, and I said that the other night, and his church is not too far from here. So he's not a carpetbagger that's coming in to try to take advantage. And that's the theme you're told. You're told that all of this stuff about the stormwater is because he's trying to defeat the stormwater permit. Well, that's not true. You said, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, Joe, pay the $4,000, it's a good price. You know what? You were probably right. But it wasn't to try to get a cheaper price that he asked. You don't know Joe Costello. If he's going to do anything, he's going to get 1, 2, or 3 estimates. And the issue was not money, but the issue was whether or not the work that was going to be mandated was going to be right, and who had it, and who should do it. He's at that site almost every day. Nate Gomes, the contractor's here. Joe's there up and down every day. Now, there are other issues, the other issues. Why is he looking for the, and I was shocked, I heard from the agent today. Did he not say that our stormwater bylaw does not have any regulations? Did I hear that? Was that correct? Well, that's what Joe Costello's been trying to argue about when he's been here. And when he asked for the records on November 28th, 2 questions. I want to know when the stormwater bylaws were passed. Never produced them. Never got them. Now, they could have been passed. Things could have happened. You know why? This project started, and there's some irony here. You had Mr. Madden here, engineer. He's your peer review on another project. Well, coincidentally, his firm did the designs and work on the project that Mr. Costello bought from the owner of the land. Okay? If you look at the minutes of September of 2017 and October of 17, one of the other things he raised on the March 8th meeting was there's no 401 quality report. Well, if you look at those minutes, October 24th, look at them. I've got them here, I could read it for you. It says, and the representative from the engineering firm says, I talked with DEP, and they didn't realize that the stormwater quality reports had been submitted. Talk about peer review, there were 2. Mr. Costello was criticized for it when he asked, I want another peer review. There were 2 in that project in September. There's minutes of meetings, September 21, you'll find that, of 2017. Now what happened? And this goes back to authority. The bylaw, your stormwater bylaw was passed in 2007. It suffered 2 amendments. And the amendments aren't bad. What they do is they say, okay, to section 7 add this, to section 9 do this, or delete that. The one that was proposed for last town meeting doesn't do that. It says, get rid of all of that and put this in. I think it was you, sir, Ms. Resendes, that asked for and I think that's on your agenda tonight, wanted to see a side by side. Where's the change? Where is it? Well, you're going to find that the commission and the agent have all the power. $300 a day fines. And in it, you find those regulations about not only O&M, that 20-year contractor maintenance, putting money in escrow. So today, you're going to think about what are you going to do and pay 20 years from now. Mr. Costello says, well, listen, I've done other developments, there are other people around. We have these associations, these homeowners associations. And when we sell the land, yeah, we pay, we'll take care of these 3 basins that we're talking about. But at the end of that time, the whole association will take it and you get your money. So he wanted to see where's the authority to do that 20-year. Well, it's in the unadopted bylaw, stormwater bylaw, regulations. You have commission, and by the way, the stormwater review board, as far as I can see, is in the planning board. And the minutes are in the planning board. However, it may be, and look, we all are here and we try to comply. I think personally it belongs probably in your commission. By the way, your commission was not created because of the Wetlands Protection Act, because under 40 section 8C, I think it is, most of the town law is in chapter 40 of the general laws. That law about Conservation Commission was in place long before they passed the wetlands law.
Right.
So you had a significance in town well before that. But I personally, it's not for me to say, I would think that it belongs in front of you. And there's no doubt that the planning board said, on a motion from the building inspector, who said, you know, people are getting confused. They don't know whether they're going to go to the planning board, they're going to go to the Conservation Commission. What do we do? And the planning board said, okay, at another meeting, January 20 of 22, Mr. Planner, do us a favor. Draw up an article for the town meeting, which was tabled. You gotta look at that. I would go back before. I don't live in the community. It's a great town. I love it. I can't play golf, and your golf course is worth anything, but I love driving through it. I love getting your apples and your peaches. Again, I'm not trying to curry favor, but it's the truth. The bottom line is, you can't tell people that they have these ulterior purposes when they don't exist. They don't have a problem in your meeting. What's the issue? Jim, what's the issue today? Do we vote for this, that, no? Anybody want to give an opinion? Agent gives his opinion. Public gives its opinion. You analyze it. You're not an expert on everything. You rely on the experts, the peer review people. You like them, you don't like them. You agree with them, you don't agree with them. But it's your independent vote, what you do every day, and you're as smart as anybody else on these issues. You evaluate it, you make a decision, and you decide. Now, I know I'm haranguing you for a long time, but I thought Joe Costello at least needed today to have somebody say up for him that he isn't trying to cheat anybody. But Joe Costello works very hard, 60 to 80 hours a week. I've known that since he was 17 years old. And he isn't going to give up anything if he thinks the law entitles him to something, be it getting a report, be it getting assets, whatever it is, he wants answers. 2 requests were made, information requests. One in November asking for, hey, what are the regulations and when were they adopted? Secondly, he also asked about this 20-year contract. Where is that written anywhere? It is in the proposal that was tabled at your last meeting. It doesn't appear in anywhere else. And I don't know if this, although I thought I heard, to his credit, I think I heard the agent today say that our stormwater bylaw does not contain regulations. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to follow them. There's some other issues around. We have the wetlands law. We have the DEP, okay? But you can't do things unless the law permits you to do them. And ultimately, getting back to his claim of appeal, I argued his actions were ultra-virus. He didn't have any authority to do that. There is a provision in the law, and today, he could walk on that land because in addition to Chapter 131, Section 40 that you pointed out, there are these Code of Mass Regulations. 131, they deal with 310, I'm sorry, I transposed the numbers. 310, Section 10.08 allows for these emergencies. You can go on the land if you're an agent. Any one of you can go on the land. And you can cite somebody, cease, stop, do, okay? But that decision has to be ratified. It needs your approbation, a fancy word for saying you're gonna say it's okay. Okay, you're gonna say it's okay. Because you are the board. You are the master. The agent is not. Now, hardworking, no question. I'm not questioning integrity. I'm not questioning ability. I'm just questioning that the application is being made as if the article was adopted, which was not. If that was adopted, everything that I say I'd have to take back, provided, because that article also says that you are the Stormwater Review Board. Now, it may have been to some letter, and by the way, your town records are awful. I don't mean you, in DEP too, because this 401 water quality report, if you look at the September, as I said to you, September 2017 vote, it's in there. They reference it. The DEP says, we didn't know you had this quality done. And it's all in the stuff that was done by what is now your peer review. And so when Mr. Costello asks for this information, he's not just trying to deny your right to demand a stormwater permit. And for purposes of today, I'll assume, without waiving, that you have somehow received this assignment, this delegation of authority. But even if you got it, and even if you give it to him under the present status, he can't do it without coming back to you and say, sir, this is what I've done, please approve. Now, that's a big job. And I'm sorry I took up your time, and I know people here have other things to do, but thank you. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them, and I will talk with counsel. And again, I have no personal animus against anybody here, including the agent. I just think, I don't believe he had the authority to act out the way he was acting, and personal statements made. Mr. Costello questions 2 peer reviews. Appeal to the selectmen. That's not an answer. All right, or somebody else, saying to anybody else, sue this person or sue that person. That's not what this commission's about. It doesn't give legal advice. I mean, I looked at his contract to see if there were any duties defined. There aren't any. The duties he defines are what you give him. And by the way, the agent recognizes he hasn't got it all. If you look at your October 21 meeting, there was a request made. I seek limited authority to grant administrative approval for cutting trees, utility poles, and issuing contracts, completion of contracts for people who are selling their land, their houses. Mr. Chairman, you said, I think it's a good idea. But you know what? That was never voted. It's a good idea. I think everybody here assumes, yep, it's okay. But there was no motion made, voted, seconded, law. Now, he probably should have that authority. He shouldn't have to come running back to you, make your job easier. But that ought to be set out that way. I'm going to talk to town council or his council. I need to know the name, who he is. Somebody got a name for me?
It's probably...
If I call you, Madam Secretary, if I call you, nice lady, according to Mr. Costello, would you give that to me?
Jeffrey Blake.
Jeffrey Blake.
Is it Jeffrey Blake?
Copeland and Page.
Yep.
Was it, keep it Casey Long. Casey Long.
Yeah, Copeland and Page,
I certainly know
Jeff Blake.
that guy. Okay, is it Attorney Blake?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, listen, thank you very much. Good to see you all. Keep up the good work, and I hope you don't go out too many Saturdays, and at least it didn't rain on that one, although it was a little nippy.
Wasn't bad.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Army.
Can I have a briefcase, please, steal it?
Mr. Gagnon, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, just,
For the record, Rainey, just...
yeah, Rainey Gagnon, Zenith Consulting Engineers. I just wanted to address one thing on the peer review comments. We're still working on getting answers on that. We had to sort of reconstruct a lot of what GAF had done to then answer some of those comments, the peer review comments.
Okay.
So we ran into sort of a question. The original design had, one of the comments had to do with water quality volume that is required for all stormwater designs. And in the original design, the drainage report from GAF references that the basins are supposed to be, they were designed as wet detention basins. And a wet detention basin is intended to hold water, it's supposed to have a permanent pool. And that permanent pool is your water quality volume. But then when we were looking at sort of the progression in 2017, when they were going through the conservation review, there were comments from the Board of Health saying that they didn't want permanent pools because they were concerned with ticks and mosquitoes and that sort of thing. So somewhere along the way, the design had changed from wet basin to a dry basin. But what that does is it actually eliminates your water quality volume that you need to treat the incoming stormwater. So we were sort of, we're wondering, should, the drainage report calls them wet basins, but on the plans, they're dry basins. The dry basins don't provide any of the required water quality volume or TSS removal that the project is supposed to meet. So, but at the same time, so we're wondering, should we make them wet basins again? Or should we be looking at some other way to get the required water quality volume and TSS removal? But we didn't want to sort of unravel. If we were to go ahead and change it back to wet basins, I didn't want to unravel any of those comments or the permit that they already have on the project. So just looking for a little input from the commission.
And if my memory serves correctly, I don't think the town allows wet basins anymore, right?
I don't think so.
No,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we would
And-
probably have to look to some other sort
Yeah.
of additional VMP to provide what it needs to provide, without actually touching
Yeah, and
the
I-
design of those basins, because
Right.
they are designed to, provide the runoff control and all that
Right.
still. But, again, they just don't, when they made that change, they essentially took away all of its treatment capabilities.
Mhm.
So we just want to make sure that we're going to take the right track to fix it.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, well, that's why I think the design was changed mid-process because of the town saying, yeah, we don't want to be having wet basins anymore. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's all
Thank
I
you, Mr.
have.
Gagnon.
Thank you for the design stuff.
All
But
right.
yeah, we are still working on the response to those comments.
Right. All right, again, since this is going to be sitting with the legal representation for now, I think it's probably wise to not open this up to comments or questions, just because, the lawyer should be answering the questions, and both lawyers should be present for that. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to continue for more information, I guess 2 weeks, or to the next meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. So, all right. So we have, the next on here, final review of stormwater bylaw, vote to recommend approval of disapproval for town meeting, and I believe Conoco is going to be here, Kevin McHugh, if Kevin's here, that would be great. I don't know what Kevin looks like. Is anybody here from Conoco? I think he was originally going to Zoom in, but I don't see that happening. The one comment I'll make on this, for those of you, and we will do a public hearing on this topic, either we do it or we do it in conjunction with planning, is that the stormwater bylaw that was passed in May of 2021 is not fully in compliance with what EPA requires. So ultimately, if we don't get this passed at the next town meeting, we won't be in compliance, which opens up the town to fines for not being in full compliance. And this amended bylaw we're proposing has been drafted up by an engineering firm who understands these topics well. We have then, all as a commission, reviewed their proposed amended bylaw against the EPA template and things from other towns, and have made some suggested changes. Those then went back to Conoco, and he's come back with 4 tiny adjustments, and I'm fine with those, and I think we're all feeling like what we will propose will put us in compliance with EPA, and thus make sure that we're not spending everybody's money on fines. Yeah, please, Pat.
So I had arranged for Kevin McHugh to appear by Zoom tonight, but Nick informed me later today, we've had complaints about the videos, people can't hear what people are saying, so he didn't want to do a Zoom from here.
Okay.
Kevin is willing to Zoom into our next meeting if we have it over there, but he explained to me that because you didn't make any edits to the document,
Right.
there was no chance that it wouldn't be in compliance with what EPA wanted. And there was one other paragraph that he added
Right.
that he felt was in all of the other towns he's just finished, and it should be there. And he accepted your definitions and other things because they really didn't matter. There was nothing consequential there. So I've sent this to Jamie Kelly. This is a complete replacement of the bylaw. So this is a different process for the town clerk. We're not editing the existing bylaw, so there won't be a red line strikeout of all of that. And Jamie should be able to draft the language for the article that they read at town meeting to pass that. And if you folks are happy with what it says, it would be good that you make a recommendation to approve that and send it to the
Right.
FinCom and town manager, administrator.
Process question, if, my recollection is that either we and/or planning need to have a public hearing.
So planning has to have a public hearing on
Okay.
it. And the FinCom has to have a public hearing on it and vote a recommendation.
Okay.
At least, that's the way it is where I live. Selectmen, FinCom, planning, make
Okay.
those recommendations. But it doesn't hurt, and Pam had sent in an email that it wouldn't hurt for you folks to make a recommendation.
Right. But in terms of being at that public hearing, at least I and anybody else that would like to be there, I think should be there to be able to answer the questions because we're the ones who
Yes, and at town
put
meeting.
this forward.
At town meeting, if any of the commission members can speak in favor of this, and I highly recommend that you speak in favor of this and explain the importance of
Right.
the penalty to the town if this doesn't get
Right.
done. And there's nothing restrictive in the bylaw. All of the regulation language goes in the body of the regulation. So the bylaw just sets the stage of,
Right.
of that, but there's nothing in the bylaw about enforcement and all those other issues. That goes into the regulation. So it's a pretty benign document.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Anybody have any questions on that? Nope. No. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
Will there be a copy available of the changes that you plan to make?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me on that. So what I prepared for the selectmen and for Mr. Kelly was a document comparing the existing bylaw and how it's been changed or sections that have been moved for the proposed. So that's available and I can email it to you if you want it.
Okay, that'd be great. So on my understanding correctly, that the bylaw will show strikeout and red.
No, because there isn't any strikeout or red line. There's a slight rearranging of things, but we haven't taken any language out of the old one.
Okay, so you're adding new, so the new
Yes.
language, would that be a different color? So
Yes.
we can see exactly what that,
Well, so what will be proposed, what gets put on the warrant won't be a different color. But if you want to see what the changes are, that's when you would come to one of the public hearings. Yeah.
So I know what you're thinking about. This is a complete redo. It's a substitution bylaw. So there's no amendment to the existing bylaw. It's being stricken in its entirety. And a whole new template bylaw is being put in. So they won't, and I know you're a planner, so you would look for that red line and then what was added. But there is no changes to the old bylaw. It's being removed completely. So this is a whole new bylaw, all new language, and
so it's all new.
Well, some of it's going to look familiar. Yeah. But what I will do is I can send to you the document that I created that compares the existing with the proposed as to how the sections have been moved and the language that's been added. But there's nothing stricken out of what's in place now.
I've done a lot of research,
Yeah.
and I was against this for a long time, and it's pretty similar to every local municipality.
it's actually
Dartmouth, Fairhaven,
EP
it's
exempt.
pretty much a cookie cutter. Here's your bylaw, like, it's the same. There's nothing hidden in it. It's
No.
required by the EPA and the DEP, and
Now,
I would,
having had experience doing the stormwater bylaw for another community, it's very difficult to pass. I just wish you well, because
Yeah.
it's very hard to get it passed at town meeting when you can't show the differences between what you have now and what you're going to get in the future. I'm concerned about some of the language that you currently have, so I'll be looking for those types of things to see if those have changed or if you're going to continue on that same track and trajectory.
Right.
But I just wish you so much luck, because it's really very difficult to explain and defend a town meeting floor. So doing all of your public outreach in
Right.
advance is...
Which is one of the reasons why I would like to do that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
so we don't bog down town meeting. Okay, next item on here is 1050 Main Street, cease and desist, stormwater violation review of matters presented, votes may be taken.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good evening, members of the Conservation Commission. My name is Jack Curry of Nexamp on behalf of Acushnet Solar LLC, Woodbridge Renewables LLC, and Cushing Solar LLC. We are on tonight's agenda as 1050 Main Street, cease and desist, stormwater violation, review of matters presented. The applicants for these projects are requesting to ask a few questions about the other projects that we have in town, in addition to Acushnet Solar, which is on the agenda tonight. These were conveyed in an email to Conservation Commission agent, Mr. Hannon, as well as members of the commission on March 23rd via email. We have permission to discuss some of those items as outlined in the memo.
Mr. Chairman?
Pat?
So this is all being handled internally by multiple departments with Nexamp, and they haven't resolved the issues with the internal meetings.
Okay.
There's a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 to discuss Nexamp.
Put this over there so.
And I would recommend that. I mean, you can hear from them tonight, but it's all subject to change tomorrow.
So when you say...
Well, Nexamp has made some commitments in our first internal meeting.
So just to be clear, which departments are part of the internal meeting?
So Andy Babola, Building Commissioner, Mark Francois, Chairman of the Planning Board, Paul Sullivan, Administrative Assistant of the Planning Board, Jamie Kelly, Town Administrator, Jeff Blake, Town Council, Dave DeVignan, elected member of the Planning Board, and Selectman Gaspar may have sat in on 2 of those meetings. And talking to Mr. Sullivan today, Nexamp still has not resolved the decommissioning fees for all of these solar fields. And they've been asking for a building permit from Mr. Babola, but there's no building permit coming until Nexamp finishes negotiating with the town on the decommissioning stuff for that. And then there are some permitting questions on a couple of these projects. I have a concern that the construction entrance at 1050 Main Street's been installed in a wet meadow that wasn't delineated. Groundwater is at the surface. The first shot of installing the construction entrance wasn't built properly, and it was allowing water to run in off the road, causing the flooding that we saw on that site visit. And then I went by, so I go by 7 sites every day and see what's going on and take pictures, and especially after rainstorms. And I went by 1050 Main Street, and they were making some improvements to the construction entrance, but they were putting actually soil on it. They weren't putting reclaimed asphalt or concrete on it. And I questioned that they were raising the road so much that they were going to actually now cut all that water off and create a lake to the left of it in that field, where we saw this loom stockpile with the erosion control around it. And I have some pictures of it, but we can't do it here. So they flooded the field after they made a revision to the construction entrance that caused 3 times the flood. Flooded out the septic system for the house next door towards the front of the road. He called the commission office and the Board of Health, and caused a huge amount of water to run down Main Street all the way to Leonard Street. Left silt and sand in the road all the way from 1050 Main all the way down to Leonard Street. And I'm told, have not confirmed, that a car hydroplaned in front of the entrance of 1050 Main Street and hit a telephone pole from the water coming off the site.
I do have pictures of that accident. That was
Yeah,
the house in my home.
I get.
I have a picture of it too.
Yep.
Pictures of my cellar full of water too.
Yep. So and this is, this is we're getting so many phone calls about water in basements. People are mad that the water's coming across the street, but we don't control that. But I don't want to tell somebody standing at the counter that there's nothing we can do for you, and that's why I dragged Bill Madden into this. And I don't know who the peer review person is for, do we have a peer review person for your 1050 project, or are you guys all done?
So,
Done with the permitting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're all done with that. So they either need to, and I sent them an email suggesting that they find a new entrance, that entrance just isn't going to work. Going through the notice of intent file, there's a notice from DEP that there was actually a wetlands loss there that was human altered very close to the front of the road where this flooding is occurring. And that they wanted the commission to look into that before the notice of intent was issued. But they printed it on the second page, and I don't think the commission saw that comment from DEP. So there's been a wetlands that's been eliminated there by one of the property owners, not by the project. And that may be contributing to the flooding. I've done some research into wet meadows, and if it is in fact a wet meadow and groundwater is within 18 inches, then that's a resource area. And I don't know how you're going to get water to drain if groundwater is at, 18 inches. So I'm getting phone calls from Mr. Barboza. I don't know who it is. Nice to meet you today. And he's having serious problems with flooding, in front of his house. And he's been having problems for quite some time.
I've been out there over 40 years. And
Yeah.
the only time I ever even got any kind of water was in the spring after we've had a ton of snow.
Yeah.
Now, every time it rains, we got a flood across the street that goes from the new road that they put in all the way down almost to the driveway of 1050.
But to be fair, you were getting flooding before they installed their road, but now it's been exacerbated.
The only time I got flooding was after a lot of snow and in the spring. That was it.
Okay.
All summer, any other rainstorm, I never got water.
Because you had mentioned that,
Since they've come in now, oh God, it's.
you had mentioned that maybe the town
every time it rains,
took out a
you get
culvert.
10 drops and I got a flood across the street.
You mentioned that the town took a
There
culvert
used to
out
be-
across the street.
Before they built the two houses, there used to be a swale. I used to call it.
I'm gonna jump in, just because we need this for the record.
Then you should go up to the mic.
Yeah, so would you go to them, and then Mr. Correa, I'll let you, I'm gonna let him make his comment, then I'm gonna come back to you. So Mr. Barboza, if you would, just for the record, just because it's an open forum here.
I'm Dan Barboza, I live at 1027 Main Street, which is immediately across the street from where they're putting in the solar farm and the road and all that. I've been out there over 40 years. The only time I've ever gotten water in my basement was in the spring after we've had 2, 3, 4 feet of snow all winter. And if you freeze up and then in the spring it would thaw out, then I would get water. Now, we get 2 inches of rain and it's a flood, and I get water. This last storm that we had, luckily, I happened to go down the basement to check, my sump pump had froze up. I was that far below my furnace, which I had just had installed. I had almost a foot of water in my basement. Pumped it out, it pumped for a week. Next rainstorm, same thing. We got big lake across the street again. They put this road in, they brought in truck after truck after truck of rock. All they did was block it up, make it more water. Then they took the dirt and they spread that out, which they had. Now they made mud. Now, there used to be, when I first lived out there was no houses across the street other than the big white house on the top of the hill. But they built the 2 houses across the street to the right. Now, there used to be, I used to call it a culvert, but it wasn't really a culvert, it was a swale. And that water used to drain down that swale. They filled it in. And they filled it in, I'm gonna say 20 years ago or so. We went to the town had them dig it,
going down towards
unfilled, and the water went away again. Now, through the years, it's been filled in again. All I asked was them to do was put a pipe in, do something to get that water to go down the road into the stream that's there. Just get rid of it. And I'm told by the DPW, oh no, we can't do that, we don't have any time, we can't do that. Well, so what? So I have to sit there and live with a foot of water in my basement every time it rains,
And a constantly running pump.
and they have the same
I have 2
problem.
pumps in my basement and they run nonstop.
I mean, I've got pictures, I mean, I think it was last year or the year before, when the solar place first started, they had this town meeting at school, and showing all these pictures they took in the middle of the summer when we had a drought. In fact, they took it right in front of my mailbox. Yeah, that's it. And I've got pictures like that all over the place. I took pictures from exactly the same spot he took his pictures from, with that, after one rainstorm. And, you know, I asked, in fact, the engineer from the solar company, I talked to him, and I asked him, I says, is there any way you could put a pipe under that road, and then if the town decides they could put, you know, put a drainage in, they could tie in? Oh, yeah, they'll do that. Next thing you know, I see them bringing all these trucks of dirt, and I walked up and I says, I thought you were gonna put a pipe in. He goes, oh, no, I'm not putting a pipe in. He says, that's not on the plans. Okay, so here it is. I'm stuck.
And the plan for the road was amended, and they didn't bring it to the commission and say, this is our amendment, are you okay with it? You know,
They
they
brought
just,
in, I don't know, they probably brought in 20 trucks, 20 big trucks of
I was
stone.
but
And they get that stone going right up to the road, which is,
Thank you, Mr. Barbarossa. So, Mr. Curry, if you're going to come back up, so knowing that there's another internal meeting tomorrow, if you still would like to make a presentation, that's your call. So the floor is yours if you would like it.
Sure, thank you. So, do we have permission to discuss some of the other items? We will address the concerns regarding the access road.
Sure.
That is why we're here.
Yeah, we'll do our best to answer them.
Okay, great. So, there is an ongoing issue with the Cushing solar property located at 0 Cushing Lane at the end of the road. There's an ongoing conversation, which I imagine would be discussed internally with the town tomorrow, between Cushing Solar LLC's attorney as well as town council.
it is a major topic of the discussion tomorrow.
Understood. So we'll leave it at that, and then I will turn it over.
But actually, Jack, I'd like you to tell the commission about that, because they did a site visit and they saw the wetland, so I would like you to mention that tonight to them.
You and I, you want
Yeah.
So that they know what we're talking about in our internal meeting tomorrow. They don't come to our internal meetings. I'm the only one who goes. So,
Sure.
if you would, please.
So we had a wetland delineation done, and submitted as part of our Conservation Commission permitting process, and received an order of conditions in,
21.
correct.
Tell me, yeah, just so we could keep the chronology.
Yeah, I believe it was May of 2021. So we had an order of conditions, and during the construction process, we received a cease and desist and have not been back out on site for work since. So I believe the question at hand is whether or not the valid order of conditions that we have, which remain valid for 3 years, allow us to continue work on the site, or if the town council has the opinion that.
So I think you missed a little. So what was discovered is that there was a wetland system up in the field in the middle of the project that wasn't delineated on the plan. And at our first internal meeting, Nexamp did commit to going out and looking at that wetland and delineating it. And then not too soon after having that discussion, we started receiving phone calls and emails from Nexamp that wetland was delineated in 2021 and that delineation stands, and that even if a wetland was found there, it's going, it's exempt, and that's that. I've, of course, disagreed with that. The commission did go out and, in fact, determined that there's a wetland out in that area. And I did get the emails, and I have heard of the phone calls from John Markey, the attorney for Nexamp, and he told us that you folks had a discussion with someone at DEP, and the person at DEP said that the 3-year delineation stands and the wetland's non-jurisdictional. So they quoted a section of the Wetlands Protection Act, 310.10.5J or something like that. Yeah. So I asked our peer review engineer that was coming tonight if he's had any experience with that, and he hadn't, but he did have the same feeling I had. So then I called our circuit rider, and I talked to our circuit rider, and our circuit rider can't find anything that specifically says that wetland is exempt. And after that, I called my 404 inspector at EPA and asked her what was her opinion, and she said a wetland is a wetland. And she has offered to come out and do an inspection with us and you folks if you want to have EPA come out and decide whether that's fair game or it just doesn't make sense that there can be a wetland system on a place that was missed. And because it was missed and a couple of years later you go to do the job and it's there, that it's exempt. It just logically doesn't work for me. Andrew Poyant, our circuit rider, is also willing to come out and look at it. And if we want to just have DEP come out rather than the 404 inspector, which would be my preference, because Andrew Poyant's available sooner than later, and we could resolve that issue and maybe get going. But I still have a question on the distance to groundwater at the entrance, and is that really just a stormwater swale, or is that an intermittent stream? I don't have any faith in the two people that did the delineation work. I've seen a lot of their work, and we've made some changes to some of our policies on wetland delineations, getting field reports and all those things that we never got. We did some research ourselves into the stormwater report, and the stormwater report was based on row crops, that it was a cornfield. But looking at our area photos, it hasn't been a cornfield in over 15 years. So he used the wrong standard to go through his stormwater calcs. But our biggest concern is there's a wetland in the middle of the project. And if everybody says it's exempt, I don't think the commission's got any problem with it being exempt. But we want to know. So if you want to take DEP up on it, or you want to take EPA up on it, I think that's the best suggestion. We don't have a peer review engineer to go out there and look at that. And I told you guys in the beginning that I have a lot of faith in Beals and Thomas. You're one of our peer review engineers as well. And let's just get it done. And you don't have to commit to that tonight? We're gonna have an internal meeting tomorrow. John Markey will be involved in that with town council. That's gonna be my same recommendation tomorrow. And by lunchtime, you'll know what's going on. Is that fair?
Understood.
Okay.
So we'd also like to discuss the access to the Woodridge Renewables LLC project, which is adjacent to Cushing Solar.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Duquette. I'm the project manager with Nexam for these 4 solar projects. One of the issues we wanted to discuss today is, given there is an active cease and desist on the Cushing Solar site, the Cushing Solar site shares an access road with our adjacent site, Woodridge Solar. We have a map on the 3rd page here of the paperwork we passed out. I did a brief write-up on this earlier today, showing the red line is the approximate length of access road construction we've had completed before the cease and desist was in place. My civil contractor has proposed, in my opinion, a fairly reasonable solution to help us get to the Woodbridge site, which it's not on this drawing, but it's actually right down here at the bottom of the page that the access road continues to the Woodbridge site. So our proposal would be to place some timber matting to help us get through the Cushing Solar site while the conversation regarding the wetland on that site, or the proposed, or the word escapes me right now, but the wetland that may be on that site, while that conversation continues, we would propose to use some timber matting to help us get construction going on our adjacent Woodbridge Solar site. There's currently no cease and desist on the Woodbridge site. No work has taken place out there because we've not been able to get to it yet. So we're proposing that we be allowed to gain access to that site using timber matting, which would leave the ground beneath unharmed while the negotiations continue.
Have you resolved the decommissioning?
We are working on that, in fact.
Okay, so the town administrator, the planning board, the building commissioner, everybody has put a hold on any construction projects for these solar fields until the decommissioning bonds are in place. And Nexamp is having a problem agreeing to the numbers that the town has put forward, and this is becoming a protracted negotiation, and that's one of the reasons for the meeting tomorrow. And although they got a building permit, they should have never been given it because they didn't have in the decommissioning money. The building permit was issued prematurely. So Andy has stopped that. Planning board's looking at it. And they'll be meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Okay, so is this one the one that would be accessed through Cushing Lane, also known as 1052?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, sorry. That's the address for it.
Do you have a building permit for Woodbridge?
No, we do not.
Then you shouldn't do anything until this is all resolved.
My understanding of building permits is they only come into play once you actually start building something up. Our proposal is just to help stabilize the site in preparation for the building permit.
But I was surprised when I went by Robinson Road the other day, although we approved cutting down the trees, the extra trees, and you had permission to put in your construction entrance, you did put in the rest of your roads and you cut all the trees down. And you're assuming that you're going to make a deal with the town on the decommissioning and all of that. And I just don't think that things that can't be reversed should be being done until you're in full compliance with all of that stuff. And that's the town's feeling. That's not just, the commission hasn't been involved in that.
Right.
And you guys are aware of that. You've been in these meetings. And I feel like you're trying to segment these approvals, and this is how this all got mixed up, is all these approvals got segmented at different times, and different boards weren't on the same page. Some boards got different plans. And you were part of that meeting where we said, one plan, a chain of emails. The email chain's been broken since then. People are calling the building commissioner asking them to do things. People are emailing me asking me to do things, and that wasn't the way it was agreed upon. It was all departments involved, all departments agreed, all departments signed off, and you got permission to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be asking them not to do a thing tonight until all departments sign off on it.
Understood.
Okay.
With all due respect, I did submit the drawings and the memos noting any changes between what the planning board saw, what conservation saw, what building department saw. All those drawings were submitted 2 months ago, and I've not seen any progress. So we've been trying to get responses. I've been emailing you, I've been emailing and calling Jamie Kelly, I've been emailing Andy Babola. We're not getting responses. We're trying our hardest.
Because they're not, so I'm not involved in any of that.
Mhm.
I'm the stormwater agent, conservation agent, but Andy Babola and Jamie Kelly, the town administrator, and the planning board want the decommissioning numbers resolved. And it hasn't been resolved. And that's what's holding you up. That's the last impediment, or last excuse for the town not to give you a license. So let's get it done.
Yeah, I believe we've been, yeah, you can help me speak to that. I believe we've been trying to get, been trying to get responses from the town to get these approved.
But you have the town's numbers, and you're not agreeing with them. The town gave you a number.
During the planning board process, we did agree on a number with the planning board, and then subsequently they revised the number, which we accepted. So it's no longer a matter of the number that's in discussion, as far as I'm aware of. It's the form of the decommissioning agreement. So
Okay, I'm told it's the number and the form. So
Sorry?
I'm told it's the number and the form.
We haven't received any other numbers from the
All right.
town since, I believe it was October of last year.
Are you folks coming to the meeting tomorrow? Have you been invited to the meeting?
This is the first I'm hearing of a meeting.
So just John Markey's coming?
As far as I'm aware, yes. This is the first I heard that a meeting had actually been called for tomorrow.
On Friday, I said, look, we haven't had a meeting since we said we were going to do these meetings. We said we were doing this all together, everybody's informed, and it's getting fractured. And it's making it hard for you, and it's making it hard for us.
I will absolutely return for the meeting tomorrow morning if that's something that I'm invited to. I would love to be a part of it.
You'd have to contact Markey and ask him if he wants you there. It's too late for me to contact anybody and say, do you want?
Okay. I understand.
Yeah. And the meeting's at 8:30 in the planning board office if he tells you.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Is it possible for me to just touch on one other topic so that hopefully once this gets resolved, the last item that I wanted to discuss is our proposal for soil stabilization at the Woodbridge site once we are allowed to gain access to tree clearing.
You can mention it now, but we will ask you to bring it up when and if things move ahead.
Okay.
So, we can get us started.
I had seen on the order of conditions, or it might have been the special use permit, that we need to approve of the stabilization method once trees are removed to ensure the site is stabilized. I know that Acushnet does not allow straw mulch as a means of site stabilization, so we're proposing a hydro mulch with a tackifier that would be applied to the entire site. This would only be until we are able to hydro seed in the beginning of May. So it would only serve as the stabilization until we can hydro seed to begin getting germination. And then once we are able to hydro seed in the beginning of May, we would do so.
I think you sent that in an email recently.
Yes, that's correct.
That's all.
There won't be any problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm texting the chairman of the planning board right now to ask him if Nexamp can attend the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go over our last item, which is our proposal to help remediate any water issues on the access road at the 1050 Main Street site.
Hello, Chairman, members of the board. Name is Nate Bounce, Beals and Thomas. Here on behalf of Acushnet Solar LLC. And we're here to discuss the Acushnet Solar Project at 1050 Main Street. And plans to address some stormwater concerns that came up from the commission. So for context, this stormwater ponding, as Pat mentioned, is a existing issue that occurs out here. Stormwater runoff comes from the top of the hill down to along Main Street, and also runoff from Main Street spills onto the site. Obviously, these conditions are increased during the winter when grounds are frozen and infiltration is minimized during the winter months. Also, significant storm events that we've had this winter with 1 inch to 2 inch rainstorms will add to that. And the permitting engineers were aware of this existing stormwater ponding during the design process and during the permitting process. So to address the ponding and any discharges from the site, we put together this design exhibit showing some modifications to the site entrance and also to the stormwater and erosion controls. First resolution is to regrade the site entrance, to berm it up, to avoid any stormwater ponding over the site entrance as seen in Pat's photos. And a culvert is proposed underneath the gravel roadway to allow stormwater to flow between the areas of historical ponding.
But it doesn't look like it's going very far once it gets on the other side. And and that's where DEP says that one of the residents wiped out a wetland.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's some way for you to channel some of that water further back, but it's gonna mound there, and it's gonna wind up in the street.
Yeah, so, yeah, under existing conditions, that's what it does now. Flow on to the site, mound up, hopefully during smaller storm events, infiltrate to the ground. During larger storm events, it will pond up onto Main Street and flow along that gutter line.
But it's getting trapped up against that stone wall.
Yes, so yeah, the neighboring stone wall is almost acting as like a curb between our site and also along Main Street. So to correct that, not to correct, to improve the bonding at any site stormwater discharges.
right here.
By mounting up the roadway, providing that culvert, it provides additional storage for stormwater on both sides of the access road.
Yeah.
Any sediment runoff to dissipate before leaving the site.
Okay, yeah.
Additional sedimentation control barriers are proposed along both sides of the site
I get
entrance.
it, yeah, thanks.
To the north and the south, and the erosion controls to the south almost form a crescent shape to help hold back stormwater. In addition, we are proposing state hay bales to give you that extra bit of storage and also filtration for any stormwater runoff. A tracking pad is proposed, a little bit up gradient of the site entrance
Yeah, you need one.
Yeah,
Why
so
did they,
that-
why did they put the dirt on the road?
It wasn't dirt, it was gravel
I-
borrow.
It was far from that. I'm a dirt guy.
We have a SIP test that we have to provide.
The organic content of that was sky high, and that's what wound up being tracked out, and it's being tracked out from people going in. You need to put some crush and run or something over that to keep that dirt out of the trucks.
There's a base material on the plans, and then we're provided a crusher on top, which is.
Okay, but that hasn't been applied yet.
It has been applied at Acushnet.
So is there a basin out back, Nate?
There is.
Okay, so if there was to be another significant rainstorm and this ponding was to occur, would you be able to pump that water and deliver it out back to the basin? Because it just can't be left here to attenuate down the road and runs everybody's backyards.
So,
Yes, we can do that. Once, if we're, sorry. If we're able to lift the cease and desist to allow us to continue with this work, we are open to suggestions to help alleviate the ponding. And if that includes pumping any significant ponding into that basin over the hill, we can certainly do that.
All right. That's a fix for that.
And just to reiterate, since the ponding occurs under existing conditions, and obviously during the design process, you have to meet peak flows out to the street under pre and post conditions. So ultimately, the goal is to let the stormwater do its natural thing that occurs under existing conditions. But our goal is to really clean that water before it leaves the site, which I think is what the major concern was.
So one of the things that'll be coming up tomorrow at the department head meeting, and DPW will be there this time, is to ask, you know, what can DPW do? It's not our problem, and we're playing ping pong.
Yeah.
That they call DPW, and DPW says call conservation, and I'm telling them to call the DPW. I'd rather cut to the chase and fix the problem. So if you'll pump your excess out back, and Dan can come up with something that maybe resembles what was there years ago.
What was it? Yeah, it was there years. Seems like the two driveways that are there.
Yeah.
Blocks off it and help retain it. But it seems like the roadway being there also eliminates some of the natural saturation.
Well, there's not much because groundwater is right at the surface.
That's right, yeah.
Yes. And I think that stone wall that the neighbors put in has stopped that water from leaving and going across their
What stopped
property.
it mostly, I think, is the two driveways, because that whole side of the road
right down
used to be dropped down. It was like a natural farmer's ditch on the edge of the road.
So,
and that has been eliminated. So that stops the natural groundwater, top water runoff from flowing down. And the road further stops that and helps pull it up.
And we're really, really putting a focus into all of these past approvals to make sure that this isn't going to happen on the other ones that have already been approved but getting ready to be constructed. Because if we had problems from a 19-acre solar field, I can imagine the 50-acre one that's coming.
Yeah, 'cause all that happens there now is that whole pool of water is there. She's got two pumps in the basement running, and all it does is pumps it out, and it saturates back through the ground, and comes straight back up in, until 4 or 5 days later, when it's had time to fully settle, and the couple of natural swales that are in the back of Keith's farm, till they have a chance to take all the top water runoff, and the natural stream, there's a swale and there's a stream.
I did get out back in the project to inspect all of the work. They've done a very nice job in the work out there. Everything looks really good. It's just that construction entrance.
Yeah.
It's you definitely got to come up with something there.
Sure.
So, for the record, could we have your name, please?
Yep, I'm Joe Ribeiro. I'm at 1015 Main. It's my daughter, Amy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so, and I guess, lastly, other solution is the compost filter sock slope interruption. We're proposing additional ones along this hill, help slow down, dissipate stormwater, and provide a little bit of infiltration prior to getting down to Main Street. I'd also like to note that the stormwater ponding that's occurring, if the site was completely wooded, cut down all the trees, installed a roadway, and we saw this ponding, it's easy to point the finger and be like, okay, it is from the roadway. Here, we're going from field cover type to a gravel cover type, so there's a slightly increase in curb number. but, you know, not significant enough to be the main reason behind the ponding, so kind of a mix of existing conditions with the work. So these are our solutions that we think will best address stormwater ponding. They'll provide additional storage and flow through the site and also clean any stormwater runoff leaving the site.
And you guys you've done the design, you're vouching for this.
Yep. So we've done the design, also been doing the swift inspections within 24 hours of a rain event greater than a quarter inch, also every 7 days, whichever one is warranted. So I've been maintaining those swift inspections and continue to monitor them, especially during these updates.
And if this doesn't work, are you willing to find an alternative entrance? I mean, because it's just not going to be possible to have this be, you know, a recurring event every time we have these rainstorms and having the residents be impacted and calling us and us telling them there's nothing we can do. And
Yeah, the pump sounds like a temporary fix to pump it out back, but I'm sure the neighbors aren't gonna wanna hear that pump.
Not unless all my other neighbors want to hear a whole bunch of dogs barking day and night.
No, depending on what kind of farm, I do some excavation, I've done in the past, you know, a fair amount of excavation work. But depending on the type of pump that they use and the type of system that they put in, if there was some type of an adequate, like a retention well, you know, the pump inserted and they ran the outsource pipe back up either alongside the road and across it, then they could essentially capture all that groundwater that's in the front, pump it out back to the, you know, to the retention pond and let it do its filtration back there.
The problem is they're in groundwater.
Yeah.
There's no opportunity to put them on. It is the pond.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they're willing to be responsive and fix things if they have to. They've got a lot of money invested in the project. It is a temporary situation, that construction entrance? Yes? Or is that staying there in perpetuity for your inspections and maintenance?
The construction entrance itself will remain there while the project is operational. If this solution does not work, we will continue to look for alternatives to it. I cannot promise that we will look for a new location for the access road, but I can guarantee that we will continue to make improvements to it, to our site access, to try to make the neighbors and the whole town happy. We don't want you guys to not like us, so we're trying.
So I guess the hook here is you will not get a certificate of compliance unless it performs.
Understood.
So you won't be able to close out your project if it doesn't work.
Understood.
And you may be prevented from generating electricity without a certificate of compliance, because that happened at Wing Lane. They got held up for quite a while, so do your best, Beals and Thomas, and make sure it works, because it's the COC that's in the balance. They're not going to get left hanging. It'll be the project.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
No, really, I mean, that's just, it can't be an impact to them.
Yep. Yeah, with that, thank you for your time.
I have a question for you, Nate.
Sure.
So, looking at this plan, I'm guessing there was were there drainage calculations done in creation of this?
So no.
Do there need to be?
They do not need to be, because, so currently, all the stormwater that comes from the top of the hill down, so that is all considered one, you know, drainage subcatchment area. We're not impeding any of the cover types. We're just providing areas for the stormwater to flow between the two existing areas of ponding. If we were changing cover types, putting in a basin or, you know, putting in a whole gravel turnaround, that would warrant, I feel like, calculations.
So, looking at the photos that are going around showing a whole lot of water, are you convinced that that location for that road is the best spot?
Correct, yes. And we think with the additional erosion controls that we're proposing, it's going to provide, you know, storage and filtration for any stormwater that does flow back out onto the street. You know, and then clean runoff from the street
after that is beyond the process. Yep.
So nothing's happening on this, certainly until whatever has to get resolved with decommissioning and this.
The internal
meeting
meetings,
tomorrow,
yeah.
Tomorrow, and there'll probably be more.
Their lawyer, the town's lawyer. Yep. But you do have permission to come to the meeting. 8:30, planning board office, same place. I drink decaf.
And in terms of these plans, since this wasn't listed as a public hearing, do these need to be presented at a public hearing? This, what we just heard from.
So it would be up to the building commissioner whether or not this is a minor change or a significant change. And that's one of the other issues at this meeting, is that some of our solar field projects may have had significant changes. So what we found out is that in the process, the planning board got a set of plans to be approved. And after the planning board approved the plans, another set was sent to conservation for approval, but they had revisions made to them, and they didn't match what was approved in the planning board. Then when it came time to get building permits, they got plans that were said for construction, and they had more amendments made to them that weren't approved by the planning board or by the Conservation Commission. And that's where a lot of these wheels have fallen off the wagon. And not necessarily your project, but some significant projects in town. So we've been trying to come up with a system that the same document goes from everybody, and it may actually slow down approvals, that we need to get a signed plan from planning. And that when we're done, we need to sign those plans so that we know that that's the plan that was approved. We just threw away multiple sets of plans and all of our notices of intent that, were quadruplicates and duplicates, and some didn't even get approved. So we're working on that as well. But we do want to make sure that everybody's on an even keel. The same thing's happening at all the solar fields. We're not going to have what happened at 550 Main Street happen at 1050 and Morse's Lane and Park Drive and all those other places. So unfortunately, everybody's a little collateral damage to that big violation at 550.
So, again, so approval of these plans, planning's gonna have to look at them, and if they approve, then they come back to us for approval? Because.
Well, what we would really do for this plan is, if we had a peer review engineer for this job, the peer engineer would check this plan, go out and look at the road, look at the distance to groundwater, and decide, is this really the right place for the construction entrance?
Okay.
I honestly don't think it is. I don't think it's going to work. I think this is going to be a lifelong problem for the people that live there, just because they've had to shut off the exit of the water.
Okay.
And when you start flooding out people's septic systems, that's even worse.
Okay. So, before I let the three of you step, does anybody else in the audience have questions for anybody from Nexamp? Paul, if you would.
I got a question on peer review. You're saying this individual don't need a peer review because he's one of your peer reviews?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
So why isn't he getting peer review for his project?
The project has been peer reviewed. The project does have a stormwater permit. They did go through that process.
So they're all done with that process?
With that process, but now they're proposing a change, and I would like to have that peer reviewed.
Okay, so that's going to get peer reviewed?
That's my recommendation. Yeah.
Just to confirm, if it is determined a minor modification by planning board, then how does that proceed?
Then that would be the end of that, I think.
Okay.
But our lawyer would have to tell us that. We haven't been through some of these things. This is
Yeah.
new territory for us as well.
Okay.
Anybody else on this topic? Mr. Curry, I'll let you finish up the discussion.
Just to close it out, we do have one last request of the Conservation Commission. That we understand cease and desist happen, but prior to issuing a cease and desist for these projects, that we get a chance to remedy any of the issues on site, because once there is a cease and desist, then we have to come back before the commission to present some solutions, and we can't do any of the work to actually remedy the problem on site.
So I have to go by your job every day. and I have to get your inspector to get out of his car and go over and look at what's going on, and I have to point out to your inspector that they're doing work that's not in conformance with the plans. And he tells me that Beals and Thomas said that it's probably okay. And I told him that probably doesn't work on these solar fields. It has to be okay, and that's been a very clear communication since that first internal meeting, is no one should assume that any change in anything in these projects is okay. It needs to be blessed by somebody. So we are interested in, if you make changes, to be notified and have a chance. And I did talk to you guys, and I did tell them that this was going to happen. And a fella from Western told me that it's not going to happen, and he knows what he's doing. So I left, and I came back after the storm and said, I came by to tell you I told you so, and that I wanted to use the porta potty, but there was no life jacket nearby. And really, it was that bad. And we look like idiots to the residents that are calling up day after day saying, I know you're coming out, but you're not doing anything. And it's no fun to work for a town and have people tell us that we're not doing our job, and get emails sent to the selectmen saying that we're not doing our job when in fact we are. And then we get crap from the proponents for doing our job. Everybody thinks they're being, persecuted. We're being sued in town for supposedly making different decisions on different jobs. And we have to spread the mayonnaise evenly everywhere. If we enforce something on Main Street, we have to enforce it on Leonard Street. And this is collateral damage for all of that, is this big focus, along with the flooding and the other issues. And you've made the town nervous by not agreeing to these decommissioning numbers and basically, trying to change the game every day. And everybody's pretty frustrated with it. So.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, 7 Morton Lane, new stormwater violation. I think this has been discussed.
Yep.
Okay. Nancy, Paul, did you want to say anything else?
No.
Okay. Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the discussion agenda, wetland violation, 6 Garrison Lane, Antonio Lima, site visit, review of matters presented, votes may be taken. I don't know anything about this one, so.
So I've been out to Mr. Lima's house a couple of times. Mr. Lima has called quite a few times. He's got a tough situation. He's got an abutter who connected extension to her roof drains and brought them right to his property line. I mean, physically, right to his property line. So all the water's dumping into his yard. It's affecting his septic system. He's getting extra water dumped into his septic system. I was there. It's a neighbor dispute. It's ugly, and I don't know that we have any jurisdiction to tell the neighbor that she can't run a pipe down to Mr. Lima's property line and dump all of her water in his yard. And I didn't want to tell Mr. Lima that there was nothing we could do, so I said, why don't we have the commission do a site visit? They can go out and look at the situation, and we can decide whether we can send a letter to the neighbor, requesting that she remedy the problem, or, I don't know. But I preferred that the commission go look at it rather than try and issue an enforcement order to this lady or something and make it a bigger deal than it is. But it's not very neighborly. And I do believe she needs to infiltrate the groundwater, the storm water from her roof into the ground, and she's not. But this is years after the fact, and if you want to say anything, Tony, explain what's going on.
I'm Tony Lima from 6 Garrison Lane. On the back of my yard, my land is lower than my next door neighbor. So they have the pipe from the gutter, comes directly to my land.
Yeah, we did.
Sorry.
On top of that, they have another pipe that's above the ground. It's a pump or whatever, I have no clue. And that connects the right to my land. So I know I'm lower. I have enough water on my land. I think we can avoid that. and I asked the commission if possible to remove those pipes because they can move the pipes the other direction to their land, not directly to my land. That's the only thing I asked the commission, nothing else.
I'll certainly do a site visit, and I've always been under the impression that a neighbor cannot increase the amount of water running onto the neighbor's property.
Right.
I didn't know that. I don't know anything about the law. That's the reason I went to the conservation to see if somebody can help me with that.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll do a site visit.
Well, we
did.
We did a site.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah.
And
yeah, there is a pipe running into his yard, yeah.
It's 2 years, two pipes.
Two pipes, but
I can show you.
One's coming from a sump pump.
one's come from, yeah,
I think it's
a pump,
and it's a
right,
lot of water.
right.
There's
I know I'm low,
a
but
couple of people here that want to.
the water can go in a different direction. That's the only thing I ask.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lehman.
Thank you.
It sounds like somebody else like to speak, so identify yourself for the record.
Hi, my name is Vic Ballin, I'm at 4 Garrison Lane. For a while, there's been issues with the neighborhood, okay? I'm on downside of Tony, Tony's in the middle, they're on the outside of Tony. Tony had a pipe that was pushed out that came down my property. And I got pictures of that where the pipe is right there. It's up about 10 feet or about 8 feet and it goes down to my property, drains my property. Never said anything. I'm trying to be fair here because I saw this on the agenda and I try to want to be, you know, I'd like us all to sit and talk and straighten out the issues that we have because he's got issues with them. Sometimes I get issues with him. I try working with him. I try talking with him. I try to set things before they get to be a big problem. I had to come up because we're talking about the septic system. That septic system has been failing for at least since 2021. I've got pictures of them pumping that septic system into the drain and going down by my house.
So do I.
So that is not
So
true
do I.
because that's been recent because there's been a property line dispute. And my well is probably, I don't know, maybe 50, 100 feet down property right from where that septic system drain is, because even the driveway collapsed. I'm not trying to be mean to Tony.
No.
But I got drinking water there, I got a family, and I saw this on the agenda, and I heard this, and I gotta be honest. Listen, I don't want any issues with him. I don't want any issues with him. I try to be a fair neighbor, but the truth is the truth. We gotta straighten out some issues.
And that's why I wanted to do it this way.
Yeah.
I thought it was best to.
I didn't even know about it. I saw the agenda, and I'm like, what the heck is this?
I hadn't thought about
you
being down
let
line.
me come here and try to figure out what's going on. Because I think maybe if the three of us sit down together and we talk, maybe we can straighten some things out.
Does he live on the other side?
He lives up, I live down.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
I know.
And he's in the middle. So, you know, we've had our issues over the years. We try to resolve them. We try to talk. I mean, there's always a little needling back and forth or whatever, but we try to be decent neighbors, right? We try to be decent neighbors?
I try.
Oh, you try, I try too. We both try.
I try.
Okay.
We have to talk.
Huh?
We have to talk.
We have to, exactly. But there are some situations that gotta be resolved. Like, I'm worried about my well.
So I'm also assistant health agent.
Yeah.
And I have received 3 complaints about Mr. Lima pumping his septic system across his lawn into the catch basin in front of his house. So I went out, and I have to admit, I did not see the catch basin at the end of his driveway. So I called my supervisor at the Board of Health and said, Joe, there's no way Tony Lima's pumping his septic because he'd have to pump it across the street because the catch basin's on the other side of the street. So last week, I'm driving down Mendel Road, I'm in the area, I said I'm gonna go to Garrison Lane. So I went to Garrison Lane, and right at the end of his driveway is a huge catch basin.
I've got a video on my phone showing it.
And it stinks.
Yeah, and it stinks all the time.
And that's an illicit discharge. And Tony, that's a very serious violation to pump your septic system into the sewer. And I'm not asking you to admit it, but there's multiple pictures from multiple neighbors. And it would be great if the 3 of you could get together, talk about it, and resolve that. But you are gonna have to deal with the Board of Health about taking care of your septic system.
That's exactly what I want to tell.
Yeah, and that's got nothing to do with us here tonight.
Well, correct, and I appreciate that.
I'm gonna let you take the mic over.
Yeah, Tony, because the camera needs to be able to.
I don't want to take his place. Everything is a process. I was told, because I have a problem with that, I know it's a big problem, I don't like this thing, I don't like this, I don't like the look on that. I was told, don't do anything yet because the state of Massachusetts or everything gonna change. You don't spend money, then you're gonna spend more money. I said, what I'm gonna do, what I'm supposed to do. And I talked to a few people, and then I said, I have to do something. This is,
Do you have an extra $50,000? Because that's what's going to cost you.
I
If you
don't
get
know.
caught, if you get caught pumping that into that storm drain, that's going to cost you $50,000.
that's the thing.
And not a
Everything
penny
is
less.
a process, and everything takes time. So I get everything working with that. They're busy. I'm waiting for them to work, so nothing I can do. And after they see what needs to be done, they're gonna tell me how much that's gonna cost me.
Okay, so you're dealing with Joe Correa on that. That's the
Correct.
my boss.
Yes.
He's dealing with that, but that's very on the radar.
Everything takes time. It's a process.
I know, but you're done pumping into the sewer.
The water running.
If that, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to run into a serious problem with the Board of
I
Health.
understand that, but the water runs to the street because
Can't.
that's not far from the street.
But not from your
If I
septic
don't
system.
pump,
You had a hose.
I didn't say no, but if I don't pump, the water goes to the street because it's not far from the street.
Then you need to fix
the
it right
situation-
away.
I tried to solve the problem. That's what I tried to do, but everything is a process. It takes time.
Right. So I'll have Joe follow up with you on that stuff,
I appreciate that.
and we can deal with
Yeah.
you folks, but
Good evening. My name's Steve Potts. I'm the abutter, higher than Tony. I'm not going to get into the septic right now. The initial problem with, I have initial problem with erosion, and we've been spent considerable money
you
and
got a
time.
steep slope there. Yeah.
Trying to keep my land in good shape. So I've spent a lot of money on loam and trying to grow grass, but it's shady, so it's always, just rain erosion is one thing. So many, many years ago, I'm gonna say over 10, probably close to 15, we had the contractor put the pipe down and underground, and he actually installed like a dry well with gravel and put the pipe there, so it was actually groundwater and it wasn't surface. Tony did a survey, and admittedly, it was on his property. About a foot worth of the pipe was on his property, going into the dry well. Now, that wasn't done, I didn't know where the property was, it was all woods, it was all trees, and, he's cleared it out, and he's cleaned it out, so now the pipe became visible. So he unearthed it, and he capped it. So my gutters were backing up, so I got a problem with erosion again. I thought maybe it was just blocked, you know what I mean, for clogged for some reason. I have gutter guards, but I said, well, maybe it clogged. Well, he came out and told me in September that he capped it. So he unearthed it and he capped it. So now it leaves me no choice because now the water's coming up over my gutters and it's eroding all my land again, which I had already paid to fix. And like I said, it was on his property, I get that. But it was groundwater, and it was pretty much harmlessly going into the ground and doing what it was supposed to do. The guy dug the hole with the gravel, the whole 9 yards. So he unearthed it, created the surface water that he's complaining about right now. So what I did was, when he told me he capped it, I cut the pipe about a foot away from the property line. I cut the pipe about a foot away from the property line, and it's still draining. I mean, I'm not gonna pay for it to install another dry well when I did it once already. I don't think that's right. He decided to make it surface water. That's on him. And the sump pump thing, the hose is 20 feet, they give you 20 feet, whatever, from Home Depot, I bought it. That sump pump turns on maybe, the first 10 years I lived there, I didn't even have a sump pump. I didn't have a problem with water. Then we had a very bad winter, and it was like in 2012, it was in April, they dumped 10 inches of rain in a weekend. So I did get flooded. So ever since then, I installed a sump pump. But it rarely goes on. If it goes on once a year, you're lucky. I don't think it went on at all last year. We didn't have much rain. It's gone on twice in February from the rain we've had. But that's it. Usually the rest of the summer, nothing. And, like I said, maybe twice a year. So that, I tried putting it out into the middle of my yard, middle of my backyard, but that's my leaching field, so it's another hill. So the water's going and washing into his property anyway. There's a 40-foot grade pretty much from the Mendel Road to my
very steep,
house.
yep.
Probably 10 feet within each, I mean, the water, when it does go into his land, it does go down and out towards the power lines. So back, away from his foundation, nowhere near a septic system. His septic is failing in the front yard. My water doesn't go anywhere near his house. His house is probably 70 feet, 50 to 70 feet away from where my pipe, you know, my storm drain is dumping into his property. So even if I cut that pipe, you know, 10 feet away, the water is still gonna go down into his property. I don't know what else, you know, that's the lay of the land.
Right.
I don't know, you know, I had it fixed at one time and he unearthed it. So I don't know what else, you know.
Maybe if you pulled it back a little bit and let some of it infiltrate through the grass.
Another foot?
Anything is a help, but to put it, you know, right up against the fence just looks like it's a...
Well, it's...
When I was there, it was up against the fence. Because he had it surveyed
It's
and had
about
all
a
the
foot back
survey.
now.
Yeah, it's about, but...
Yeah. I don't know that you know, based on everything we're hearing, that there's anything that we can do about it. I think it's something that you folks, you know, have to work out. But the septic system, you know, today's the last day that you can pump that septic system out. You either have a septic company come take it away and keep the paperwork to prove that it went off-site, or Joe Correa's gonna be knocking on your door.
Fix it.
It's a federal offense to pump your septic system into the storm drain.
I understand that, but the water keep coming up, you know, and runs to the street. What am I supposed to do?
Hire an engineer and have the engineer tell you what to do.
I just told you, sir. I'm working with the engineer. I'm waiting for the contractor to go there to see what needs to be
But don't
done.
wait for the Title V regulations to change and all this stuff. That's not happening for years.
That's the reason. I get the permit already,
Yeah.
but it's a process.
So you've had a design done already?
No.
Then you don't have a
They have to
permit.
go there to see what needs to be done.
Then you don't have a permit already.
Oh, I don't know. I went
I
to
do.
City Hall, I paid some, I don't know. I don't know anything
No.
about
This
this.
has been ongoing for over 2 years.
So, has to be done.
It's gonna get sped up.
Yeah. It's been
Okay.
ongoing for over 2 years.
It's on notice
And-
now.
And he's had,
Correct.
no, please. You know, this has been failing for at least 3 years. He's chosen to do other things with his money, on his property, that's fine, that's his, you know, his house, he gets to do whatever he wants. But, you know, when you're polluting our groundwater, not so much mine because I live above him, but when you're polluting possibly Vic's groundwater with sewage, and, you know, you want to redo your floors or whatever he's doing in his house, he's got money for that, but he doesn't have money to take care of a septic system that's polluting his groundwater.
Oh.
I have a problem with that. I
So
do.
anyway, yeah, Mr. Pond, it's on notice now.
Yes. Maybe he didn't know then, but he knows now.
Oh,
But he knows now.
And he said the
You gotta go up to
he
the
said the
microphone.
pipe is right. I still have above the fence, I still left 1 foot or foot and a half there. So the pipe is cut right on the edge, and they know that. So when I blocked that pipe, I did that on a Thursday, which is my day off. I did that, and I says the water's gonna go to the gutter, it's gonna damage the house, this and that. And on a Sunday morning, when I saw him, and I told him. So a few hours later, they went there, they cut. And the cut comes straight, the water comes straight to my land, it's cut right on my edge, because I still have,
But
above the fence, I still have land.
But I think we moved beyond that, and I don't think that we have any jurisdiction over that, and that's why I wanted the commission to look at it. When I meet with the building commissioner tomorrow on something else, I'll ask the building commissioner about it. But for me, the big issue is that you're pumping raw sewage into the town
So
sewer.
nothing can be done about those pipes.
I'm gonna ask the building, not by us. I would ask the commission if they think there's something they wanna do. But in my feeling, it's non-jurisdictional for us, but they vote, I don't. I only work
I
here.
understand, so I want to know if anything.
So you can-
The other problem, I know that.
They can answer you.
I'm working with that.
Hey, I'd just like to ask Mr. Lima, is there any way you can divert that pipe that comes out, that goes pointing right at my property with the...
What pipe?
Right near the blue, I'll show you.
There's no pipe over there.
There was. There's a blue pipe, there was a pipe coming right out.
Is this something that can be discussed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, we can discuss it. Just because I think the water's coming out, yeah. Right there, you know, they get the blue tile.
I think it's a fig tree there.
See? Yeah, but see the
There's no
pipe?
pipe there.
See the pipe that's coming out of the fig tree? Right there?
Okay. So,
The pipe right there.
We're on overtime.
yep.
Oh, God, can I show this picture? Yeah, no, that's all right.
Guys, we don't have any jurisdiction over
This
this.
pipe he's talking about, sir, I have to explain to you.
We don't have any
This is a
jurisdiction
fig
over it.
tree. This is a fig tree, and I put the pipe against the fig tree, and the pipe so the air can flow.
All right, I got it.
Peter, please, come on.
I'm talking, I don't think I...
Come on, you listen to them. Thank you, Victor. You listen to them. I'm the bad guy. Thank you.
Next.
You listen to Victor.
Okay, I told you, we can talk. See, the problem is, you're in the middle, you've been the problem
here.
all the time.
Me,
Not here,
thank you.
please.
I can't believe that.
I can.
As a fig tree, the pipe was through as, that was for last year.
We reviewed the matter.
Okay, maybe that was my mistake.
We're trying to finish our meeting. Guys, we're trying to finish our meeting.
Thank you.
You come to see me,
So,
if you're a good neighbor.
If you're a good neighbor, you wouldn't do some of the stuff you do.
entertain a motion
That's
that
fine. Thank you
this
very
is not
much.
in our jurisdiction, and we'll leave it to
You're good,
the
man.
building department.
I'm listening to that.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstaining, that's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Other item on the wetlands violation, Manchester Lane, map 11, lot 33H, commercial landscape debris in the wetlands, review of matters presented, votes may be taken.
So, on a couple of site visits at Titleist and on my most recent one for the visitor center, Kevin Kelly and Bill Madden actually brought up, how do you drive by that every time you come here for an inspection and not notice it? And I said, it has been brought to my attention by the assessor. The assessor called a month ago and said, we think that someone's living in that. It's not residential. Can you go look at it? And when I went out and really looked at it, I mean, that guy's filling in the wetlands with landscaping debris.
Okay.
He's added to the back. There's a fence there for some animals and things that look like he's put in. I wasn't going to bang on his door and bother him or write an enforcement order. I want you guys to go by and look at it and decide, do you want to send him a letter telling him that we think he's got a wetlands violation, come to our meeting? Or do you want to just issue an enforcement order and tell him to come to the meeting? Because it's got to be cleaned out. It's significant.
I think we should have them come and talk to us.
Yeah.
Fine with me. Let's do that.
I agree.
I took a ride by there.
Yeah, so did I.
There was a new truck there. I didn't see anybody outside, so I didn't go on the property.
So I haven't gone on the property, but I've gone by about 6 times because I keep getting pinged by Joe at the Board of Health. There's a health issue there as well. And the assessor's concerned that it's not being assessed the way it should be and so on and so forth. And Titleist even mentioned that it's an embarrassment to them for the caliber of people they have coming to their facility to have to drive by that. And Bill said, why don't you buy it? And they said they did talk about it, but they feel that there's some serious issues there because of what's been dumped there, so they don't want to buy it. So it's a catch-all for everything, is what it's become. And he must be a landscaper or a wood guy. And that's why it was viewed from the street. So we'll send him a certified letter and ask him to come to our second meeting in April.
April 26th?
April 26th meeting. How's that?
That's fine.
All right.
Update, Pat, regarding Lake Street.
Okay, so as you know, there's been some, well, you folks approved, the basket, can I have that, Lake Street? You guys approved a notice of intent out there in 2017 to install some docks, a concrete landing for the docks, and to do some emergency road repairs, to put a sidewalk along the side of the road and install wooden guardrails. The DPW had forgotten actually about the notice of intent, which is 5/14, and it was issued on 4/3/2017. It was recorded. It's been extended for code. It's still in effect. They were going to file a new notice of intent to finish the emergency sidewalk repairs. It was my opinion they don't need to do that. You already gave them an approval. So I sent an email to Dan and told him that they could proceed with the rest of the emergency sidewalk repairs and installing the rest of the wooden guardrail because the NOI is still in effect. They've started the work. I went out there today while they were working, and going towards Middle Road down Lake Street on the right-hand side is where they stopped putting in the wooden guardrail to the bigger pond, I guess. And people are launching kayaks and canoes off of that banking, and they're eroding the banking a lot. So I asked them to put some crushed stone, 3/4-inch crushed stone into those swales going down to the water to stop those impacts. And to actually, on the sidewalks that he's putting down, instead of using crushed stone, put down hot mix asphalt, if he had the money in his budget, and they do. So they're gonna pave the sidewalks and prevent that disturbance from people dragging stuff and walking over it. And then they took some of the stones that were along the wall, and there's a little picnic area next to the boat ramp.
Yeah.
So they put the stones there to prevent anybody from driving into the parking lot at 50 miles an hour and running the people over sitting at the picnic tables. So they put those up as a safety barrier. And they should be done in a couple of weeks. I went there today and took pictures, but we don't have any way to show them. I'll show them to the next meeting, and maybe there'll be more work significantly done. But if you get a call from anybody saying that they're out there working, there was a notice of intent. It was approved by the commission, and it's still in effect.
Anybody in the commission with business?
Oh, one last thing. I did notice that the boat ramp going down to the dock is dirt. And it's getting beat up from people backing down the boat ramp. So I talked to Kathy at DPW and said, do you have money in your budget to pave that? And they do. So I have suggested that they pave that up to the top to where it's level. And then coming in off of Lake Street, there's a big divot because you go right onto dirt. I've asked them to put a paved apron from the edge of the road into the parking lot to stop that and keep the water in the parking lot.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yep, so it's all on track.
Good.
It's gonna look good.
Anybody on the commission with business?
Nope.
So our next meeting is scheduled for
Should I
April
mention the
12th,
OT
so
thing?
keep that in mind.
One more discussion item. So we had an internal meeting today with all the department heads and town administrator and Selectman Wonar. And the beginning of the discussion was about the budget. And they brought out the budget, and they were showing us all these things, and I asked about the money, what's going on with the raises. So they made a deal with the union, with the AFSCME union, to take all of the clerks and basically decided that having a clerk position wasn't fair, that actually everybody is doing the work of a senior clerk. So they signed a deal with the union, and it got distributed today, that all clerks are now senior clerks, and they're senior clerks at the highest pay grade. So everybody just got a raise to what Joanne's making, but Joanne did not get a raise because she's still a senior clerk. And I mentioned it, and I was a little edgy about it, and I said, why is it that the commission voted at PAF, the town administrator signed at PAF, someone asked what I was doing in the building and it got ripped up, and now you're giving all these people a raise, but you're not fixing this problem. We're talking about $75. So we are falling seriously behind on minutes and other administrative things in the office. So my suggestion to the commission is that we approve Joanne to work 3 hours of overtime a week to handle minutes and other Wetlands Protection Act duties, and that she gets paid for 3 hours of overtime out of the Wetlands Protection Act, which comes to very close to the $75. And when I brought it up, the assistant treasurer collector who does payroll told me that Joanne can't get this raise without working overtime, that she can't get paid for working the same hours just for additional duties. And one of the people at the meeting said, well then, why is the assistant town accountant working as the IT coordinator during the hours that he's the assistant town accountant? And the assistant treasurer collector didn't have much of an answer for that. And I said, look, if this is the games we're going to play and we're going to split these hairs, I'm telling you right now that we as United Steelworkers are not going to be willing to do AFSCME union work. You're not going to get me to do their work because you don't want to pay her to be here. I met with the union yesterday. The union told me that I can't, none of us can refuse to do AFSCME work, but that we can file a grievance. So I told them at the meeting today, if you're going to split hairs on this overtime stuff, then anytime I touch a piece of paper, I'm going to file a grievance that I was forced to do AFSCME work. And if this is the way it's going to go, this is the way it's going to go. Because you can't resolve it for 5 people and bring them all to the level of the person that you're trying to get a raise and not give her a raise. It's obscene.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
I agree.
So I'm asking you guys to authorize 3 hours a week of overtime for Joanne to work on wetlands protection issues. And if you guys approve that, I can notify the town administrator and I can tell them it's coming out of the Wetlands Protection Act, and that should be that. So,
Okay with that, Joanne?
It's the only way I want to get caught up. We tried to figure out other ways to do this.
she had to work overtime tonight just to finish the stuff for the meeting.
Right. And we were promised a full-time clerk, and we still don't have one.
And it's not being funded in the new budget, and they sent out a memo that effective immediately, all of the offices have to be open every day till 4 o'clock, and if someone goes to lunch, you can't close the office, you have to cover that. And that's when I said, well, I'm a different union. So you're going to need to have an AFSCME member available to come and do lunches, and come and do sick days, and come and do vacations. Because if they have to plan their vacations, management knows when that AFSCME employee is going to be out. So hire some more AFSCME employees, and you know, you do it yourselves. Don't try and handicap us. Everybody in the departments works well above what's required of them, and the town forced us into bringing in this union thing. So that's the way it's going to have to be. But we can't refuse to do the AFSCME work, but we can grieve it, and we're willing to grieve it. I'm the shop steward and the union president, and I let them know today I'm willing to do it. So if you want it, it's game on.
So I'm on a motion to approve 3 hours of overtime for Joanne, so it should get paid. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that's unanimous. All right.
Thank you very much.
What else we got, Pat?
That's enough.
That's, yeah, that last one's too much. It shouldn't even need to be discussed.
It's obscene. Yeah.
Okay, next meeting, April 12.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
I must put